Ladies and gentlemen, today's the day and we're live. Just getting situated here. Just got off work. Oh, 1 second. Somehow my phone was already on the stream on the other device, but here we are. We're rocking and rolling. Smooth start as per usual. Gotta get looking nice and spiffy because it's earnings day, right? It's earnings day. Q1 earnings, a lot of different things to look for, a lot of different thoughts about what might happen out there. Of course, those of you that know me know I'm just here to cover what's happening. I'll give you what I think, and the numbers will really tell the story, right? That'll really be what it comes down to. Charging up my phone real quick, getting all situated, got that fixed up. Get the chat going on the side screen here. Charging the phone as the backup, so in case my laptop on the side dies here, boom, we pull up the chat on the side, because I'm sure people have a lot to say after the actual numbers come out, so we'll get into that. But I'll say hello to everyone real quick. John, what's good? Scott, what's up, Get earnings report, hold off on the press. Yours is aftermarket close. Yes, sir. Most anticipated earnings report is here. Cheers to everybody. Do less. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for being here. Jackson's excitement builds. That's right. Make no mistake. Was there loud noises? I was getting ready. I was running all around. Yeah, I had to quickly go. I was like, guys, got to get off work early today. It's an important day. It's a busy day, right? So I've already kind of previewed about what I think is going to happen in the earnings report, or just some different thoughts. But just to recap, really, I think the market right now is trying to price them like a Bitcoin treasury company. So I feel like if they don't show an additional Bitcoin buy, the stock price will go down. Even if EPS sees a massive beat, the current analyst estimate, although I say take that with a grain of salt, there's only 2 analysts covering this company right now, is 4 cents on the bottom line. I am predicting we're going to see something like 10 or 11 cents. I think that's a lot more reasonable. Could be a lot higher because of the sale of the Canadian operations, which we got an announcement of May 5th. Although it was announced May 5th, but did it happen in the first quarter? Because the first quarter ends at the end of April. This came out on May 5th. This was through the Business Wire, but I don't know if maybe the transaction actually technically closed prior to this coming out. But GameStop didn't do a filing about it, so we'll see if there's any information in there. If it's not reflected within the financial statements of Q1, I'm sure we'll at least get a little bit insight of as to what the net amount they made on it was. And obviously they bought Bitcoin, and I'll go through this all in a second, but I want to quickly go through my predictions. So I like to just predict numbers because analysts predict numbers. Everyone out there should predict numbers because why not? Give it your best shot. Try and anticipate, learn, and improve. So we got the Q1 numbers over here and the analyst estimates. So analysts are estimating 754 million in revenue and 4 cents of EPS. Again, that's the average of only 2 analysts. And you look at Q1 last year, they brought in 881 million. Net EPS of negative 11 cents, which was negative 32 million in net income. And at that point, there was 305.9 shares outstanding. Right now, I didn't add it on here, but it's about 395 million, because you got to keep in mind that at this same report last year, as in Q1 2024, the 3 share offerings weren't completed yet at that time, so the cash wasn't on the balance sheet, and the shares issued and outstanding wasn't updated at that time. So here are my estimates, right? I guess you could call them guesstimates because I'm just giving my best shot based on following the company closely and just kind of my best estimate as to what's going to happen. But just remember, I'm just a guy on the internet, so I could be wrong. So take this with the utmost grain of salt. And it won't really matter in about 15, 20 minutes or so. We'll get the actual numbers and we'll be able to reflect upon that. So I'm estimating revenue about 758.9 million. So I think a little bit more than what analysts are estimating. I do expect it to decline year over year. However, I think EPS will be 11 cents per share. Reason being is if you do a net margin on this revenue rate of 5.5, it comes out to be about 41 million, and then adjusted for the about 395 million shares outstanding, gets you about EPS of 11 cents. I think SG&A will come down to 265. The same quarter last year, it was 295. So we'll see what that kind of looks like. And then margins, I'm estimating 29.1. Operating negative 1.1, and I have good faith that later this year, operating margins are going to flip positive, which is what I think they're really working towards in terms of winding down Canadian operations, getting ready to sell off the French ones, and closing any stores that are just not cutting it, as we've seen over the past couple of years. So having said all that, these are my best estimates. We'll see what actually happens. And ultimately, I really want to see gross margin go over 30% throughout this year. So when I'm saying throughout this year, I'm talking about Q1 2025 with this particular report coming out, but then we got 3 quarters after this, right? So this quarter can really set the tone for the year ahead, but also, if it's not the most magnificent quarter, it doesn't mean, 2025 is all doomed, right? So I would like to see gross margin go to the mid 30s on a consistent basis, get operating margin up to 5%. I don't think we'll see that this year, but I do think we'll see it flip positive, maybe even 10%, over a year or two looking ahead. And then net margin, get that number closer to 10% on a consistent basis. But again, that's all kind of getting ahead of ourselves here. And, we look at what 2024 was for the same quarter. It was 27.7 gross margin, 5.7 operating, negative 5.7 that is, and then negative 3.7% on the net side. And right now, it's really the interest income that's really boosting the net margin. And then you're looking at SG&A as a percentage of revenue. This would probably work out to be about the same if I had to guesstimate off the top of my head. So that's kind of something else to keep in mind. And then same quarter last year, they lost $32.3 million. So if they can show a net profit in Q1, I think it's very likely they're profitable for the whole rest of the year, unless there's some unforeseen, big spend that they spend money on. So we got the annual net income. You can see that also continues to trend up. Got a line chart, bar chart, whatever floats your boat. And, looking year over year, so this is from the last report, which is like the annual report, we saw that the amount of stores, like the change was a 23% decrease. So as they shut down 23% of their locations. And also you got to keep in mind, the Canadian business was sold off. But again, that really was either at the tail end of Q1 or technically in Q2. So whatever they made from Canada this past quarter will pretty much be accounted for. And looking back also just what we've kind of seen throughout this last quarter, there was the speculation of like, are they going to buy Bitcoin after the picture came out with Michael Saylor? I had put something out a while ago. Did they already buy Bitcoin? And evidently they didn't. As time rolled on, we figured that out. But they did update their investment policy last earnings report to basically say, hey, we can acquire Bitcoin as a treasury reserve asset. A couple months later, they ultimately did acquire it. So they have 4,710 Bitcoin as of now that we know about. So could there be more Bitcoin? I think it's certainly a possibility. And again, I think the market is looking for more Bitcoin on the balance sheet, to be completely honest with you. And I think even if they have a great earnings report, but then they don't buy more Bitcoin, the market's going, oh, not good news, and the stock will go down, right? That's just my prediction. I could be totally wrong, and I almost hope I'm wrong, because I think if they have a great report, that's good reason for the stock to move up. But those of you that know GameStop, I'm sure as many of you have followed it for quite some time now, you never know with this company, right? Any company after earnings, it could be a great report, stock could go down. Could be a bad report, stock could go up. And then it could start in one direction, right? It could be way up and then be way down by the market open tomorrow, or vice versa. And we've seen that with GameStop and a lot of companies after earnings reports. So just kind of keep that in mind. I think a lot of it hinges on Bitcoin. I think the market has to kind of figure out they're not going to purely be a Bitcoin buy or a Bitcoin treasury company rather. And I'm totally okay with that. So I'm okay if this is all the Bitcoin they have. It will be interesting to see though, what cost basis do they have it at? When exactly they bought it? If they did in fact buy it prior to this filing, well, obviously they bought it prior to the filing, but there's a lot of speculation of, hey, when the 8K came out, did they buy it just a few days prior or within the past 3 business days and then they filed within the required time? Or did they actually buy sometime in between March 25th and May 28th, maybe when Bitcoin had dipped to like 80, 85,000, and they didn't actually have to file it immediately because they had updated their investment policy, and that was the disclosure. So there's been some debate about that. That could be potentially settled today, depending on the specifics of the report. So that's definitely something I'm looking for. And then also, we had 3 insiders acquire additional shares, Ryan Cohen and Larry Chang on the same day, and then later on, Alan Adel. So they all have a significant amount of shares, obviously with Ryan Cohen having the most. And it's funny, a lot of people, look to Larry because he tweets a lot and he talks a lot. He's the most active of the board members online. But if you look into Alan Adel, he's really Ryan Cohen's like right-hand man. He was there, at least I think, right? Obviously, I don't know that for sure. But he was there from the really early days of Chewy and played a significant role in the growth of that company and ultimately selling out for a massive gain. He definitely reaped the benefits and he's stayed alongside Ryan Cohen to this day. He's now on the GameStop board of directors. And also, people forget that when Ryan Cohen joined the board initially in December 2020, before the craziness of January 2021, Alan Adel joined alongside him right away. And then only Larry Chang was added a little bit later on. Once, the dust kind of settled, he became chairman of the board and basically said, hey, I'm getting all these old board members out of here. And while we know now that GameStop sold off their Canadian operations, we do expect them to sell off their French operations. When I say we expect, it's because they filed it and basically told the world, hey, we're getting ready to sell this off. If there's any interested in buyers, come talk to us. So maybe we'll get something on the sale of French operations. I don't necessarily think so, although it's a possibility. And then obviously they had the convertible note offering, which by the way was upsized to 1.48 billion, so nearly $1.5 billion raised at 0% interest. So also called Project Rocket, forgot the other quotation mark there. And the most important parts are, one, that it was upsized, or the main points I wanted to point out rather. And two, upon conversion, right, when the conversion terms are met, the company will satisfy its conversion obligation by paying and or delivering, as the case may be, cash, shares of common stock, or a combination of cash and shares of common stock at the company's election. So it's GameStop's choice how they want to pay back this note upon the conversion right being exercised in the manner and subject to the terms and conditions set forth in the indenture, which is right here. You can get into that a little bit later, but I'm sure most of you know the general terms of it. And then pretty much around the same time as last earnings, roughly, they had got to 1 million cards submitted, and that was only after like about 5 months or so. So we'll see if is there going to be a 2 million one coming up soon, maybe, potentially. But just overall, it goes to show PSA is doing well. And then also a little while back, and looking further back at my gazillion notes here, trying to organize it all, but pretty much pulled the most important stuff. Now Turner joins the board, so he doesn't have any shares yet. I really like to see him buy shares after this earnings report, although I don't necessarily know that's the case. But he does have vested interest in the sense that PSA is getting a lot of additional business from GameStop. And I always cite myself as an example because I would not have been grading cards right now if it weren't for GameStop. I've been buying some cards, and even before GameStop was involved in cards, I would buy cards and then sell them here and there. Mostly just kind of buy ones I like that I think have good long-term value, and players I like. I focus on football and hockey primarily, a couple baseball ones. But overall, because GameStop was doing the grading, I'm like, all right, you know what? I'll rip some packs. I got a couple cards I want to send in, and I was like, I'll send them in, because it's a simple process and it's good for a newbie collector. A lot of people will say or critique, oh, well, what veteran collector or person who's pulling cards left and right and grading tons of cards is going to go through GameStop? They're not. That's the honest truth. But for newbies like myself, or people who are just getting involved in the game of PSA, or just very casual collectors, as I would describe myself, I think it's a great system. Makes it real easy. I'm a GameStop Pro member, so I can use my $5 a month coupon on sending it in to get graded. Also to maybe buy another pack to rip. Like what I tend to do is when I bring in the cards to get graded, I wind up buying another pack, and then sure enough, I usually get another one to grade. So I've also been doing like the hockey cards as of late, and I literally just got the guy, for those of you that follow hockey, Elaine Hudson, who just won the Rookie of the Year award. So very exciting that I got his rookie card, and now I'm getting it graded. I'm hoping for a 10. I'm praying for a 10. But we'll find out, right? I'm just going to have to be patient and find out. But that's really the latest on the company. So really it's exciting. Once per quarter, we get an update of the numbers. So I have to be updating these charts as well. Drop off 2020, 2022, and just getting everything all situated and ready to roll. Hi from UK. UK Dave, hope you're doing well. Thanks for being here. Make no mistake, Bitcoin up at 110K is a good thing. Couldn't agree more. Make no mistake, couldn't agree more. And something to just keep in mind also, there's an accounting rule that's going to go into effect that's essentially going to change how the bottom line is affected. We're really going to see it in MicroStrategy's upcoming report. So kind of keep that in mind. It's called Rule FASB ASU 2023-08. It's an accounting for and disclosure of crypto assets. So it kind of is changing how it's going to be reflected in standard public accounting, like what is filed. So just kind of something to keep in the back of your mind. To dig some more into it, I highly recommend it. I still got to look into it. That's why I got it open here. So kind of just got it on my radar. But I don't think it really affects this report too much. But let's see, we're getting real close. All of a sudden, I just realized I never tweeted this. Let's get that out. All of a sudden, it's just about time, right? It's just about time. We are about 5 minutes out to getting the latest numbers. We had a nice little run this afternoon, now a little drop off, but listen, this is literally nothing, relative to how GameStop moves. So again, my honest thoughts are that if they don't show that they bought more Bitcoin, the stock's going to go down. Even if they crush EPS, it's like 25 cents per share of EPS, which would be amazing. And I think that'd just be a great buying opportunity for anyone who wants to add to a long-term position. But again, I'm just a guy on the internet, so don't listen to me. Nobody knows what's going to happen. And I do want to see them buy more Bitcoin, to be honest with you. But I'm also not going to be like, oh my gosh, it's the end of the world if they didn't show us more Bitcoin acquired. And people are arguing, oh, well, they bought the top with Bitcoin, right? Or they're going to buy the top. But when you realize what Bitcoin's long-term value proposition is to hedge against the fact that the US dollar continues to lose purchasing power, I don't really look at it as buying the top. And especially if they have a long-term viewpoint, as I believe they do, you really can't worry too much about your entry, especially when you're just getting involved. But also keep in mind, people are like, oh, they only bought 500 million of Bitcoin. Here, listen to that again. 500 million of Bitcoin. That's quite a lot, right? $500 million worth of Bitcoin. That initial buy already made them like the 12th largest company, or the company that's holds the 12th most Bitcoin in like the entire world at that in a time, right, of the initial offering, or initial purchase rather. So we'll just have to see what the numbers have for us today. I'm very excited. I'm very interested to see. I feel like there's a lot of different stuff going on with this report. So we just got to stay tuned, right? We got to stay tuned. Any minute now, not any minute, we got a few minutes, but it really, to me, is about continued profitability and positive free cash flow. And I think we'll see that this quarter. I have pretty good faith, and based on, the moves I've seen them make, I think that will be the case. And then maybe we get something on the French sale of operations. Maybe they found a buyer, not necessarily going to be a guarantee, but that could be something that's disclosed in this upcoming report. But to be fair, it was only back in like February. They said, hey, we're getting ready to sell these operations, and finding a buyer, especially when you want to get a fair buyout price, it's not always going to be a simple process, right? So I'd rather them take their time, and then when the time is right, find the right buyer, boom, sell off those operations. And to me, it looks like they're ultimately just narrowing down to operate only in the US for the legacy business, and maybe keep the Australian business, because I feel like that seems pretty stable, right? That's under the name Micromania. So maybe that's the case, or maybe it's one of those they kind of just keep monitoring it for the time being and then see how it shakes out. But again, appreciate you guys being here. If you want to drop a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. If you got anything, throw it in the chat. I don't care if you're a bull or a bear. Everybody's welcome. I welcome everyone. But here we are. Oop, probably just hit the mic. And another question I've seen kind of asked out there is there going to be another offering? It's always possible, right? And essentially by doing a share offering, they're kind of raising the floor. And when you look back here, they raised 3.4 billion last summer. And in doing that, right, and I have all the details up here, they always sold off the shares very quickly. So they always completed these offerings in like just a few business days. The longest one was like 7 business days. So there's evidently always been demand for those shares. And we're still sitting at a price higher than the point we were after all of these offerings. So to me, if they offer shares, so be it. They'll just keep stacking their war chest, keep getting ready for more moves, whether that be Bitcoin or something else. And also just a quick reminder, forget GameStop, right? Obviously forget GameStop. How could you not forget GameStop? There's so many articles telling you to do so. You got to forget it, right? You got to forget it. And also, keep in mind all the tinfoil that's come and gone, from Greg to Wu-Tang to, oh, I'm an insider. I have a non-disclosure agreement, so I can't reveal exact positions. I work on the Swiss team at JP Morgan or whatever this was, right? Remember this whole thing? So anytime you see crazy theory, just remember how many crazy theories have come and gone. And just look at the numbers. Just look at the numbers. And just like that, it is 4 o'clock. So earnings should be coming out any moment now. And also this guy, right, Sultan, what was his deal? Probably just talking about some other potential business. I don't know. But it seems like low key to me. He's just kind of grifting off of Ryan Cohen's, I don't want to say fame, but widespread attention. And then also as a side note, right now max pain for the week does sit at 29.50, so kind of around where we are, but I feel like you got to take that with a grain of salt. And yeah, the numbers will be coming out any moment now. So initial jump, okay, we're going up in the after hours. Let's see, do we have a filing yet? Do we have a filing? We'll have to spam refresh. But this is the market just going to start bouncing around. Could see it go up, down, left, right in circles. Nobody truly knows. Let's go. Y2, what up, what up? Hope you're doing well. Ryan, what's up, my guy? Yo, what happened to the Oilers last night, dude? They looked horrible. They look so unraveled, man. It's crazy. Hey, bro, good luck. Have fun. Jack Reacher, that's what it's all about, man. And listen, at the end of the day, there's going to be traders, investors. You got to know what's best for you and never put more in than you could afford to lose. And just know thyself and continue to improve. And that's whether it's with GameStop or the market in general or any individual stock, Bitcoin. Just keep educating yourself and keep understanding your own risk tolerance and just continue to evolve and improve, right? Just do the little things right. It goes such a long way. So anything yet, although maybe this comes out as a news release first. So we'll keep refreshing here as well. Get the older reports, but I think I'll drop those out so I don't confuse myself as much. Everything cleaned up over here. So let's see. Do you guys think they bought more Bitcoin? I feel like they bought maybe another 1,000 Bitcoin or so, or 2,000. That's like my gut feeling. Although the other part of me feels like, nah, they didn't really buy any more Bitcoin. Like they're just kind of rocking and rolling as is. But again, even if that happens, I think that's all right because they really just started acquiring it. And when you see the long-term viewpoint for Bitcoin, I don't think you necessarily have to rush into it, and I'm okay with like a dollar cost average sort of approach. So, hey, yo, fingers crossed for GME. Fresh Maker, what's up, dude? I got a new mic. Remember the old days? I had the crappy mic on the headset. If I thought it wasn't working, you helped me out. In the OG days, man, I always remember. Tetron GME earnings live in 4K. Geronimo, what up, what up? It's out. Hey, Hadouken. All right, let's see what we got. Oh, we got a little jump. Let's see. What do we got? News releases is in the SEC filings. Why does mine never want to come out? Let's see. Annual quarterly reports. No, I don't see it yet. Oh, okay. You ready? Here it is. Net sales of $732.4 million for the period compared to $881.8. SG&A was $228.1 compared to $295.1. Okay, pretty significant drop there. Definitely love to see that, especially because revenue is a little bit below expectations, but that's all right. Operating loss was $10.8 million for the period compared to an operating loss of $50.6 million prior for first quarter. So that's operating. Operating loss includes $35.5 million of impairment charges related to international restructuring efforts. Okay, we're going to dig into that more. Excluding the impairment charges and other items, adjusted operating income was $27.5 million for the period compared to an adjusted operating loss of $55 million in the prior year's first quarter. Okay, so what that sounds like to me, just at a surface level, they were profitable on an operational basis, but this impairment charge is what actually brought them an operational loss. However, net income was $44.8 million for the period compared to a net loss of $32.3 million. And that really is a result of all the interest income. Excluding the impairment charge and other items, adjusted net income was $83.1 million for the period compared to adjusted net loss of $36.7. So really the impairment charges, which by the way are a one-time thing, are the reason they weren't more profitable. So completed divestiture of Canada on May 4th, 2025. So the news of it came out through the Business Wire in late May, but it did in fact happen in early May. And they purchased 4,710 Bitcoin between May 3rd, 2025 and June 10th, 2025 for cash. Interesting. So why are they disclosing between this specific period? Well, maybe we'll find more on that. But yet that's the amount that they initially disclosed, right? And see how the market's treating it. So quick little jump up, kind of down. Market doesn't seem like it really knows what it wants to do at this given moment in time. So let's see how that shakes out over the next few minutes, a couple hours. But overall, let's see. Cost of sales significantly down. You know, obviously you want that to drop if revenue is going to drop. It seems like cost of sales, just at a glance here, dropped about in line with net sales. So not the most ideal, right? A little bit better in terms of gross profit. SG&A saw a nice drop. We definitely want to see that, you know, especially as you're just continuing to trim. You want the overhead costs to be the least amount possible. Operating loss of $10.8 million. And again, that's really because of the asset impairments, as we know from up there, and I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit down the report here. 56.9 million in interest income. That's really great because at this rate, they would earn about 200 million in interest income if rates don't change. But it does seem like rates will be cut, so you do want to kind of keep that in mind going forwards. But overall, their net income was 44.8 million, which equates to basic EPS of 10 cents, diluted EPS of 9 cents. So they'll start to be a slight difference of these numbers, and you'll see here as well, basic versus diluted. And that's really a result of the convertible note offering, because diluted EPS accounts for as if the shares, or notes rather, were converted into shares. So cost of sales as a percentage did go down. SG&A, still over 30%. Would have liked to see that a little bit lower in terms of a general percentage. I do like that gross profit was 34.5%. So it was over that 30% number like I was mentioning before. Hopefully they can continue to drive that up, eventually get it near the 40s. Operating loss still at 1.5. Not too great, but not horrible. I mean, really, again, I'm reacting in real time, guys. So correction. Operating loss of 1.5 is not so bad when you consider the asset impairments. So otherwise, they really would have been operationally profitable. And then 7.8 million of interest income. And again, this is percentage of everything as a whole. And the net margin was 6.1%. So if I want to quickly compare those to what my estimates are, not too bad for me. I had revenue a little bit higher. I was nearly there on EPS, nearly there on net income. Overestimated on SG&A, underestimated on gross margin, about in line with operating, but I didn't account for the impairment, and about in line to net. So they got a decent estimate, but again, doesn't matter too much, to be honest with you. So let's look at sales. You see Canada has a loss, Australia has a small loss, and Europe has a loss for a total overall loss. But asset impairments between Europe and Canada are really what made those greater losses than what they would have been. But it is really encouraging to see that the United States was a net profit. I think they got to keep that going. And I don't see a reason they wouldn't, as they've made it evidently clear that profitability is their number one priority and delivering shareholder value. So let's see, stock going down. Shocker. Barely though, barely. It's honestly barely moving right now, which, given that EPS is pretty good, I feel like that's kind of what's offsetting the idea of like, oh, they didn't buy more Bitcoin, and they, revenues declining worse than expected, or whatever the case. But it could go down more, guys, because again, I feel like the headlines tomorrow are going to be, well, GameStop didn't buy more Bitcoin. They continue to sit on their hands. They're sitting on their cash. They're not doing anything, right? That's just my gut feeling. That's what the headlines are going to be tomorrow. And maybe the stock opens tomorrow down to like 27, 26.50, something like that. And then it rallies back to like 29 by end of day tomorrow, when the market kind of realizes like, hey, they're still net profitable, and they continue to try and trend in the right direction in terms of profitability. So those are just initial thoughts. Let's see what else we got. So as of and for the quarter ended May 4th. So this was, 2025. This is 2024. And you could see last year they weren't profitable in the U.S. Now they are. So about a $50 million swing there. Canada, you don't have to really look at that anymore because it is now closed, the sale of operations. And then Australia, they're still maintaining that. Europe, they're getting ready to get rid of the French business, and potentially they ultimately wind down all of the European business. But we'll have to see on that. So a whopping $6.3 billion in cash on the balance sheet. No marketable securities. Marketable securities are really just treasury bills, treasury notes that are within 3 to 12 months. Basically, they're all in really short-term things, probably mostly money market accounts or T-bills that are just, a few weeks out. Less inventory year over year, which makes sense, which is consistent downsizing. Assets held for sale, 226.2. So we saw that go up because of getting ready for the sale of those operations. Total current assets, 7.81 billion. Very limited liabilities, operating lease right of use assets, getting ahead of myself here. But then also looking at, total liabilities, 2.5 billion. Current liabilities, 847 million. So you're looking at their new current ratio is definitely even better than it was before. It was like 8 coming into this report. Now we can divide it by this. So the new current ratio on GameStop is 8.38. So just got a little itsy bit stronger, because you do have to keep in mind, someone did mention this to me, a slight correction from my previous streams, that I was like, oh, their assets are going up, but you got to keep in mind, technically they do have long-term debt now, right? But that long-term debt, literally nearly all of it, is really just a 0% convertible note. So is it really debt? Yes. Is it really hurting them? No, especially when they could just pay it off in cash if they so choose to when the time comes and the conversion terms are met. So overall, they had net income of $44.8 million. That hits the top of the cash flow statement. Depreciation, amortization about the same. Nothing too crazy here. Stock-based compensation expense. I wonder if that went up because of Nat Turner. Asset impairments. We're going to get into that later. Receivables net, about in line. Merchandise inventories, nothing too dramatic there. But overall, positive net operating cash flow. I absolutely love to see that. And then looking ahead, investing activities, not too much, because keep in mind, they didn't really raise capital, whereas back here, it wasn't raising capital, but this was really just switching from marketables, showing the change of like out of marketable securities back into cash. And again, that's just really short-term things, such as a money market account. Proceeds from the issuance of convertible debt. So that's the 1.5 billion. And then overall, they're going to have really strong free cash flow as a result of this. But even if you take that out, the amount of cash increase for the company is still about 150 million. So positive free cash flow, even if you exclude what they raised from the sale of convertible notes. So the sales mix, everything, generally going down, not too surprised about that, except collectibles. Look at this change in collectibles here. Wow. Huge, and especially when you look at percentages. Collectibles as a percentage of sales has now nearly doubled year over year. And that's largely in part of PSA and grading cards, the sale of cards. And I think that's a really great thing to see. And it really shows that they're diversifying away from just being purely a game company, a video game company. So let's see, anything else doing with the stock? Yeah, still trending down. Can't say I'm totally surprised. Wish I could say I was surprised. But again, if you're long, do you really care about this 5% move? We were at 28, a couple days ago? We bounced right back, right? So that's absolutely nothing. But future's so bright. That's why I got the shades on. Let me see what some of you were saying in the chat real quick. Let's see, bro. Good luck. Have fun. Tetron GME earnings. Yes, so, Geronimo. Do less. It's out. Hey, let's go. Tetron, the man, the myth, the legend. Turner, what up? Long stock. Let's fucking go. Bitcoin was purchased between May 3rd and June 10th. Bitcoin was 90 to 94K during that period. Okay, the market has decided where it wants to go just yet. They'll shove it down no matter what. Anything negative they can. Exactly, I'd rather be skiing. Exactly. I guarantee you there's headlines tomorrow. GameStop does not buy more Bitcoin. They continue to sit on their hands and do nothing and leave investors questioning what they'll do next, right? Guarantee those will be the headlines tomorrow. So adjusted SG&A expense for transformation costs. That's affecting EBITDA. Okay, now is there anything on Bitcoin here? So they just have the initial Bitcoin buy, current holdings Bitcoin. Okay, so that's the bulk of it, right? Let's see if the actual filing's coming out. Probably not yet. Oh, just kidding. Here it is. All right, so can we download this? This is not very clean. Okay, I guess this is a little better, but a little bit more spaced out. All right, let's see what we got here. So we already went through all this. Whoa, okay, I actually don't like this. This is even worse. We'll just open the document. So I'll just skip right ahead and get a little impatient, go to Bitcoin. Between May 3rd and June 10th, 2025, company purchased 4.7 thousand Bitcoin for cash. The purchase occurred after the balance sheet date and did not affect the company's financial conditions or results of operations as of May 3rd, 2025. Okay. So, remember that those of you who were here a little while ago, let's talk about this new accounting rule. This isn't coming into play because their purchase was technically in the second quarter, but they're showing it on the balance sheet. Interesting. So income taxes, or we'll find the details. We'll go through Bitcoin, and then we'll go into the details on the Canadian operations. On March 25th, we announced that the Bitcoin as a treasury asset, equity issuance may be vested in Bitcoin. We have not set maximum amount of Bitcoin we may accumulate. We may also sell Bitcoin. We may sell any Bitcoin we may acquire. Okay. So also I noticed this section continues to shrink the business priorities. They don't even really have anything now about profitability. So just seeing this initially, my thought is they're going with the approach of GameStop or Stopaway. Obviously, that's not actually the name, but really trying to primarily become a holding company. And I'm just really starting to think more and more that they're ultimately going to acquire another company, either in the PC part space, right? Newegg has long been speculated. Maybe not necessarily that, but something relating to computers, video games, digital, or something related to trading cards. And then could they merge with PSA, the parent company collectors, given that Nat Turner's on the board? I don't necessarily think so. I don't think it's entirely impossible, but I don't see why they would do that. But I feel like they're really going to go with the approach of becoming a holding company. And people are like, oh, well, revenue, yeah, sure, EPS is going up. EPS is getting better. They're more and more profitable, but revenue is going down. You can't last like that forever. True. However, if you're just changing the approach to acquire Bitcoin, GameStop's just one segment of things. They spend some money to build out card stops, right? Just random example, I'm not saying that's what they're going to do, which are just smaller locations that only focus on PSA cards and PSA submissions. And then also they go acquire ABC company for $1 billion and put that under their assets, right? And basically then they'd have like a diversified business model in a way, or it'd be a diversified holding company that they can continue to just build out. And I feel like that's kind of where they're going. That's just more and more what it seems like. So if we zoom in a little, whoa. Okay, let's see. Where were we? So I want to see this, and we'll keep going on the Bitcoin. Establish omnichannel retail excellence. We aim to be the leading destination for games, entertainment products. Achieve profitability. We continue to optimize our cost structure, align with our current and anticipated future needs. We continue to focus on cost containment as we look to increase operational efficiency. Expand addressable markets. We continue to explore ways to increase the size of our addressable market through new product and service offerings, maybe more private label brands such as CandyCon, including offerings in graded collectibles category, okay? Expansion of these categories provides the company with margin accretive opportunities that can assist the company in achieving its profitability goals. In connection with our efforts to achieve sustained profitability, we continue to evaluate our international assets and operations to determine their strategic and financial fit and to eliminate redundancies in underperforming assets. To date, we have taken the following steps as part of this ongoing effort. 2023, we exited our operations in Australia, Ireland, and Switzerland. Fourth quarter, closed down store operations in Germany. Fourth quarter, we sold our Italian subsidiary, which operated our Italian stores and e-commerce business. And on February 18th, we announced a plan to pursue our operations in Canada and France. During the first quarter, we recognized impairment expense of $18.3 million on the Canadian disposal group and impairment expense of $17.2 million on the French disposal group. Okay, so it looks like they did wind down the French operations. We initiated a comprehensive store portfolio observation review, which involves identifying stores for closure based on the factors, current market conditions, individual store performances, review, among other things, resulting in closure of 590 stores in the U.S., continue to downsize, really just use the analytics to determine what is best. While we expect our cost containment efforts to yield reductions in selling, general, administrative in the long term, we have incurred and may continue to incur non-recurring costs related to effects of the short term, basically anything being wound down. And then PSA collaboration. All right, let's keep going on Bitcoin. We intend to use the net proceeds from the convertible notes for general corporate purposes, including acquisition of Bitcoin. Okay, our investment in Bitcoin exposes certain risks associated with Bitcoin. Okay, this is kind of like just disclosure. You got a lot of Bitcoin in here. Our Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, broader digital assets subject to counterparty risks. Anything significant in here? Neither we nor our custodians would be able to access Bitcoin held in a related digital wallet. Okay, so, wow, okay, so nothing on the cost basis? Interesting. Okay, let's hit the chat real quick and then we'll circle back. It's my favorite corporate term. Circle back. One day I'll never have to circle back again. That's the goal. But let's see. Market decided where it wants to go. Expect Huckabee between now and GameStop's annual shareholder meeting. Not surprised, Geronimo. 20 to 25 zone is buying area. Totally agree, to be honest with you. I don't know if it'll get that low, but you never know with GameStop. There was a lot of hype around this earnings report, so it was lukewarm compared to the expectations. Bulls and Bears both seem hesitant for a heavy move. I think that's a great point, Ryan. Couldn't agree more. I feel like the Bears are like, okay, well, they are getting more profitable, but then the relatively newer Bulls are like, are they buying more Bitcoin? Are they profitable enough? Is the revenue still an issue, right? And there was like a lot of hype, and as I was saying before a little bit, a lot of different factors to look for in this report. It was more than just like what are the numbers. It's like what's going on with Bitcoin, what's going on in the sale of French Canadian operations. So a lot of different things playing out in real time. And also, as I'm reviewing this in real time, I would just encourage everyone to, you're going to have different emotions right now. We're humans, we're emotional creatures, and different ideas of like, oh, is it this? Is it that? What? Oh my gosh, this is so great. Oh my gosh, this is so bad. Try and just remember you have to digest the news, kind of stomach it, and then look back tomorrow again with a fresh mind, and you'll find that like some of your different opinions may have changed, right? Because I remember some people in the note offering came out, like, what are they doing? They're diluting more. And dust settled. It was kind of like, oh, it's at a 0% rate. They're using the funds to buy Bitcoin. They have the right to pay back in cash and not shares if they so choose. So just little stuff like that you got to keep in mind. Thanks for the insight. Do you think it's a flame now? 995K Bitcoin purchase moved into next quarter profits, made an $80 million swing. It's all good news. 6.4 billion in cash. Mr. Baga, what up, what up? But yeah, that could be the case. Dropping sales because of fewer starts. No, yeah, offbeat. That is correct. That is correct. And I expect revenue to continue to be down year over year, right? When you look at Q2 last year versus Q2 coming up, revenue will be down, but I think profitability will continue to trend up. My guess is crime. Let's see, 36.1 gross margin in the U.S. Disgusting. Not too bad at all. Yeah. Why is stock price tanking, Bob? Because that's just the way she goes in the stock, right? That's just the way she goes. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down. And I really feel like if they had shown like they bought even just a little more Bitcoin, I feel like it would have went up. But then the headlines would have been, oh, GameStop's price is up after they acquire more Bitcoin. But I guarantee you the headlines are tomorrow. GameStop continues to sit on cash and not utilize enough to buy Bitcoin or something along those lines. There's always some nonsense, right? I've graded 200 cards successfully through my local GameStop in the past 8 months. It's a huge opportunity to buy PSA. Geronimo, yeah, you're absolutely right. And when you look at the collectibles category on here, it's a significant portion, right? So 211.5 versus 136.8. So that in itself is a large increase, but then when you look at what it is as a percentage of net sales, to me, that's really encouraging because generally speaking, collectibles are going to have higher margins, and it also shows their efforts are working to diversify the business away from just video games, as Ryan Cohen mentioned in the Bitcoin conference quick interview he did. They had to divest from just being involved in video games, and it seems like they continue to do that. And also keep in mind, we are now in a console cycle. Switch 2 just came out. Seems like it's pretty well liked by the masses, the public, so that's definitely encouraging. But we'll have to just kind of see how things continue to shake out, right? Just take it report by report, day by day, quarter by quarter, however you want to look at it, right? Price isn't tanking as hard as I imagined. Seems resilient. 30 plus is easy with any type of positive catalyst. Let's just say GameStop showed up more than the Oilers last night. You're not wrong, Ryan. You are not wrong at all. The Oilers looked horrendous yesterday. I've never seen a team get so unraveled, especially like they know how the Panthers play. Like you should know this as the Oilers, but I digress. And yeah, I agree though. I would have expected a sharper move down. Not to say it can't fall more, but I feel like, sure, it could go down. We could open tomorrow at like 27, and then we could close tomorrow at like back up at 29. And yeah, it's still technically down, but when you zoom out, still in a general uptrend, right? And I really like the weekly candles. I could see us, being a little lower or kind of floating in this range and then continue to kind of just stair step upwards over time. But again, I'm a guy on the internet. Nobody knows exactly what's going to happen. I don't know. No one else out there knows. All we can do is just react and study the numbers as they come out in real time. But we see in real time right now, prices trending down. It's not too dramatic. What's the move? About 5%. Really not too big of a move. I feel like as of late, the moves after earnings really haven't been too crazy for GameStop. And just remember, whatever it's trading at now, it doesn't mean it will trade at this price at the market open tomorrow or by the end of the day tomorrow, right? So we'll have to see how it all shakes out. Are we going to get another offering? I know there's definitely some people out there wondering that. I really don't think so, given that they haven't used that full $1.5 billion that they raised yet. They only used about $500 million for Bitcoin. So, yeah, and I just don't see that happening. This guy, Mr. Myogi or Stock Trader. Short Fridays. Thanks for being here, man. I appreciate you always coming back to the channel. A hype before a bigger dump. Jamie, it could be. You never know. They didn't refill the ETFs not to short GME. This is fully expected, just how the criminals roll. Hey, yeah. Listen, it's the game within the game, right? We also not forget the fact that Fintel is showing 3.7 million shares available at short closing time. So let's wait until tomorrow to see what the numbers are. The available shares to short. Doug TV, thanks for being here. Someday they won't be able to do this anymore as the company slowly changes. Agreed. I would rather be skiing. Agreed. Because if you have Bitcoin exposure and Bitcoin continues to go up, they continue to just accumulate interest income. Like they're just continuing to build their foundation stronger and stronger. It's like they keep adding stones to the foundation and their base just keeps getting stronger and stronger. They can just keep building up. We're not stupid. We all know they're controlling the price. Listen, Doug TV, your words, not mine. But ultimately, I really just like look at it as things are going to happen in the market. There's all these complex things that I think are truly impossible to completely understand in terms of functionality. Like the whole fact that every broker technically owns the shares in the name of Seed & Co. is just mind-boggling. So there's just so much to uncover and understand and fight against, so to speak. So for me, I think it's best to just look at the fundamentals, focus on what the company's doing. And I used to say, oh, well, it's the term MOAS, right? Has kind of been faded out, and I don't really use that anymore because I feel like this one, it's just an acronym, right? Of mother of all short squeezes, and there's no definition for mother of all short squeezes. Everyone out there has their own individual opinion as to what that looks like. To me, the modern day version of that is just them succeeding in whatever nonsense is going on behind the scenes. If they drive forwards, continue to be profitable, operationally positive cash flow, free cash flow positive, making acquisitions of Bitcoin and other things when they see fit, and just driving forward and succeeding. Whatever's underneath is naturally going to bubble to the surface. And that was the case with Tesla, right? When you zoom out on Tesla, it's kind of a wild ride as of now. But zoom out on Tesla, right? Especially back here. This period was just a wild ride. And it was like one of the most hated bull runs. And I feel like that will be the case with GameStop as well. It'll be a very hated bull run when it starts really moving. And again, that's just my opinion. And right here, even right when we got a taste of it, going crazy again for the first time in years, just going absolutely nuts. Return of DFV, but people forget also, before DFV returned for like this jump here, it was stock price had already doubled over just 2 or 3 weeks before DFV came back at all, or before anybody knew DFV was going to come back, right? So just worth noting there, the stock does just tend to trade in these weird cycles where out of nowhere it just has a lot of price action up, then a lot of price action down. We've had some mini moves as of late, right? Uppity up, downity down, uppity up, up, downity down. So when's the next uppity up, up? I don't know, but we'll have to see. But to me, the fundamentals just continue to look good, continue to get stronger, and I'll just continue to dial in and read into what they mean, the specifics, try and make sense of the numbers. And if they do issue more shares or convertible notes, honestly, so be it. I think it's just going to make their balance sheet stronger and work out better and better for their long-term plans. I prefer they didn't until they use that $1 billion that they have left from the last capital raise by issuing the convertible notes. But also, if they have a game plan, rock and roll. But I was really hoping to see an official Bitcoin cost basis. So we know they bought it between May 3rd and now, but we also know they disclosed it upon the Bitcoin conference taking place. So it's really between May 3rd and the Bitcoin conference, which was May 28th. So it was really between May 3rd and May 28th. So that would be right about here, right? Between here and May 28th, which is right about here. So can you add, how do you add a vertical line? I don't ever really use this, these tools. But basically they bought either right in here, like right there, and right here. So they bought their Bitcoin somewhere within this time frame, right? So their cost basis could theoretically be as low as like 93,000. It could be as high as 110,000. I personally feel like it was probably in this period of time right here, like right before they actually filed it with the SEC, like upon Ryan Cohen doing that Bitcoin conference. But also, why don't they just specify? It's a classic GameStop. They kind of keep everyone guessing, like, just a little bit, right? Trying to figure out, like, what exactly is going on. But I think, in a way, it's, like, great. And I find it entertaining, to be honest. And it's fun to, like, try and figure it out. But the people who are betting against it, shorting it, whatever the case is, are like, what did they actually do? What do they actually do, right? So just remember, every time you're not aware of something because it's not something they were forced to disclose, the people betting against the company or preying on the downfall of the company are also left with those same questions. So at least no gap down of 30%. Good luck, everybody. I'm gone. All right, well, take care. Thanks for being here. But yeah, I mean, I feel like the days of dropping 30% after earnings are gone unless there's some unforeseen disaster. But you never know with GameStop, right? I feel like it's one of those stocks that's funny. Like, it's more likely to move 30% on no news just because it trades in weird cycles rather than actual news or an earnings report coming out. Although if they acquired something exciting, maybe that would be a different scenario. But it's GameStop. You never know. You just never know with this company in the short term. But the long term, I think I know where they're heading. And I'm just going to keep riding this wave. So let's go back in the report. See what else we can dig into here. So I want to find out more about the Canadian operations. So we operate 4 segments. Yeah, this is no longer to be the case in next report. Control F is your friend on these filings, guys. I'm telling you, it helps a lot. And when you don't understand something, really the best thing you can do is use AI to your advantage. Not like what is GameStop's EPS? Check there. Like, you don't need to do that. You have to look for that yourself. But stuff like, okay, what is an impairment loss? And then you could put that into Grok or ChatGPT, whatever you use, and then use it as a tool to learn. So I feel like AI is, I say this a lot, it's very cool, but it's very scary. And I feel like you gotta just use it for the best of your abilities and just to sharpen the saw and continue to like improve yourself. Don't like to blindly depend on it, but use it to understand like aspects of the financial report or whatever you're studying in some sense. I found that helps me, but I'm not ever like, oh, well, tell me GameStop's receivables, like check their website, because it has a hard time pulling specifics like that, but just trying to get better understandings. During the first quarter, committed to plan to divest operations in Canada. All relevant assets and liabilities, the Canadian Disposal Group, were reclassified as held for sale. We recognize impairment expense of $18.3 million on the assets in the Canadian Disposal Group during the first quarter of 2025. As of May 3rd, 2025, the carrying value of the assets held for sale and liabilities held for sale in the Canadian Disposal Group were $52.4 and $58.3 million, respectively. On May 4th, 2025, we sold our Canadian subsidiary, Electronic Boutique Canada, which operated our Canadian stores and e-commerce business. The proceeds and loss of disposal are expected to be immaterial to our financial statements. So essentially, I read that as this was already all accounted for in the numbers that came out. You don't really have to worry about it in the upcoming report. That's how I read that upon a glance. But again, once the dust settles, looking back tomorrow, I'll re-go through everything again, see if there's anything I missed, which, by the way, if you guys don't already, follow me on X, at TetronInvest. And I stream every Friday, talking GameStop. And whenever something else pops up, such as earnings, I'm like, another stream, why not? But typically, or my guaranteed weekly stream time is Fridays at 5 p.m. Feels like Wednesday for some reason, but it's Tuesday. Not that that matters, but where were we here? So during the first quarter, management committed to a plan to divest the company's operations in France. All relevant assets and liabilities, the French Disposal Group, were reclassified as held for sale, and we recognize impairment expense of $17.2 million on the assets in the French Disposal Group during the first quarter. As of May 3rd, 2025, the carrying value of the assets held for sale and liabilities held for sale in the French Disposal Group were $173.8 million and $148.9 million, respectively. The sale of operations in France is expected to close during the fiscal year 2025. The assets and liabilities held for sale are presented separately on our consolidated balance sheets. Okay, so that's where we saw that. So this is something to look out for in a future report. So it sounds like the sale is in progress, but it hasn't been quite completed. So there should be more on it in the next earnings report to some extent, but it doesn't disclose who the buyer is. I haven't seen anything out there, but I do think it's good that they found a buyer for it. Because if you are going to try and diversify away and sell off that a segment of the business, might as well do it sooner than later, right? Why take longer if necessary? So it's nice they do evidently have a buyer lined up. Probably just some final terms that need to be finalized before they can actually disclose who it is and whatnot. But digital assets, in December 2023, Financial Accounting Standards Board issued SAU number 2023-08. So I'm going to note this for myself real quick over here, because this is something I literally knew was coming and I do want to look into it more. So we'll circle back on that. And basically, it'll probably describe here, so I'll read this first, then if it doesn't, I'll provide more insight. The new crypto assets standard requires certain crypto assets to be measured at fair value separately on the balance sheet, with changes reported as unrealized gains or loss in the statement of operations each reporting period. The new crypto asset standard also enhances the other intangible asset disclosure requirements by requiring the name, cost basis, fair value, and number of units for each significant crypto asset holding. The new crypto asset standard is effective for annual periods beginning after December 15, 2024, including interperiods within those fiscal years. Adoption of the new crypto asset standard requires a cumulative effect adjustment to the opening balance of retained earnings, so it will affect retained earnings, another thing to keep in mind, as of the beginning of the annual reporting period in which an entity adopts the amendments. We adopted the new crypto asset standard on a modified retrospective approach effective February 2nd, 2025. The cumulative effect of the changes made on our May 3rd, 2025 consolidated balance sheet for the adoption of the new crypto asset standards was immaterial, and the company did not hold any material investment in crypto assets as of May 3rd, 2025. So in short, this rule will impact the next report because the Bitcoin was acquired in Q2, and this is the Q1 report. So again, just something to keep in mind. And again, we see here breaking down revenue. Very, very encouraging to see this. This is probably the most exciting part of the report so far for me. The fact that collectibles grew so much year over year. And I think we'll continue to see the growth of that segment with the success that PSA has had in their partnership with GameStop. And you can see it includes the sale of apparel, toys, trading cards, gadgets, and other retail products for pop culture and technology enthusiasts, including trading cards. That's obviously the big one. I wonder if one day we ultimately get a trading cards segment, which includes like what's sent into PSA and the sale of PSA cards on the website and in stores. And that's really what seems to be the most significant portion of the report. I would say the collectibles, no updates on the Bitcoin. What else did I have here? We were looking at margins. I really like the gross margin jumped. That's excellent. They got to keep pushing that, because if you push gross margin up, gets a lot easier to push operating and net margin up, especially when you're cutting SG&A. So we were also looking for the margins, Bitcoin balance. So we don't have an official cost basis, but we can look over here and we can get an idea. Oh, my lines went away, but they bought between May 3rd, which is back here. So they bought between here and roughly here. So somewhere in this range, right? Hopefully it was on the lower side, but think about it. Even if they bought up here, they're still break even right now. And again, I feel like if you have a long-term viewpoint, who cares what the current price point of Bitcoin currently is? And also they're loaded with cash. Any kind of dip, they could easily swoop in and buy the dip. So we'll see how that shakes out. SG&A, nice drop. Details on sale of Canadian operations, we got that. And now we know they did start to sell the French operations, but they got to continue to ride that out. So let's see. It's been about 5 years. What are we even talking about? It'll just take time. Thanks for being here, the Boshimo Entertainment. I appreciate you being here very much. Thanks. You should make sure you click like as well. The reported cash is not 6.4 billion, which raises their cash per share times 2. This is important because it seems to be the floor price of GME now. Cash per share times 2 puts the floor price at 28.85. Was previously around 25. Nice. No, good additional context, John. I appreciate it. Just seeing everything in real time. Nice. I just want this shit to go up so I can sell. I'm tired of the same shit every single time. People building up the hype like something's actually going to happen. Then price takes. Same shit, different day. Listen, I understand what you're saying, but here, I'm not here to hype you up. That's not how I rock and roll. I don't believe any of the Greg stuff, any of the, oh, on this date, right? Look at all the tinfoil that's coming on, right? I saved some of it here to look back at sometimes. All the forget GameStop, oh, the Wu-Tang, oh, this person, this leaked information, the sale's going to be closed this week. You could try and trade on that, but it's just tough, man. It's just tough. The reality of it is it's a long-term game, just the game of investing. If you're in it for the short term, it's tough. It's a tough game to play. I'm not going to lie. And that's why I really don't focus on the short term. I will sell puts now. I only have one active put. I sold a $28 put for towards the end of the month. And I held off on selling any more because I'm like, all right, I want to see what the report looks like before I kind of make my next move. And that's the extent of my short-term activity. But I keep that entirely separate from my long-term position. So my GameStop shares that I've long accumulated don't get touched at all. So I'll never ever sell a call on my long-term position. Only with new cash that I accumulated and saved up, and I was all right, let me try the option selling game. And I've tried it with a couple other stocks, but I feel like GameStop's the one I'm most familiar with. So that's like a potential short-term strategy. But what I'm trying to say here is you have to know yourself. Like if you're just hoping for GameStop to quickly go up and just sell all your shares, I just feel like that's not going to be the case. Like you just have to be patient if you're just accumulating shares with the hope that the price goes up a lot, because yeah, sure, it'll go through these cycles where it goes up really quick, but it's just going to go through cycles where it goes down as well. So you got to play the long game. But of course, I don't give financial advice. So at the end of the day, you got to do what's best for you. And if it's stressing you out too much, maybe you got to kind of zoom out, look at your overall financial situation and determine, maybe I got to divest a little bit. And listen, that's all right. I think everyone has to do what's best for themselves. And sometimes it takes time to learn and understand what's best for yourself, or your situation evolves or changes in some way. I like your positivity, bro. Sorry for being negative. I subbed and liked the stream. It's all good, man. It's all good. Listen, I get it. There's ups and downs, but I appreciate you dropping a like, man. Thank you. I would use the diluted share amount if you're going to use that floor price. Yeah, make no mistake. That is a good point. And actually, now that you said it, kind of pops in my head that it's like, you do have to account for the diluted share price, assuming they're going to pay out in shares, but also, assuming that they're, going to pay out in shares, but they could pay it back in cash if they choose to, right? That's the greatest part about this convertible note offering. It gives the company full flexibility of how they want to pay out to the note holder. So we'll see how that shakes out. I feel like they're going to buy more Bitcoin this quarter. That's also my feeling. It's getting warmer here. I'm going to have to take this off. Getting unofficial now. Numbers came out, so we can take it off. But I feel like given that they bought Bitcoin to start their position, right? Damn, I don't know why I got so much warmer in here. Well, it was raining before. Now the sun's out. Maybe that's why. But get this off to the side. Just don't want it to get wrinkled. But I feel like if I were them, right, I would say, okay, let's raise the 1.5 billion and let's deploy it over the next 6 months or so, and just a sort of dollar cost average into it. A true dollar cost average is just consistently every week, something like that. It's not impossible that they do that, although I feel like they're probably going to buy in chunks, but they have plenty of cash available to acquire more Bitcoin, but also be patient and keep their cash. And my thought process is they want to acquire other companies and or assets that are not just Bitcoin to, put under the umbrella of a GameStop holdings company. So they have the PSA side, they have the legacy business, right? I've kind of been saying maybe they create smaller stores they start opening that are called Card Stop, and it's just they hold events where people exchange cards, play trading card games, things of that nature, and just strictly focus on that. And they're smaller locations, so low overhead costs, right? Maybe that's a part of things they do. Then they go buy out another tech company of some extent, or to some extent, or some size, right? Relatively smaller. And then they continue to buy Bitcoin at the same time. So I feel like they're going to keep, deploying the capital as they see fit, not just all in Bitcoin, but also they don't want to rush to do that, right? In terms of buying out another company, or buying, let's say they buy a 50% stake in a large tech company of some kind, right? Just all theoretical here. But my point being, I don't think they want to go overpay. And I feel like we've been in a relatively expensive market for a while. And even when we got a market crash, right, a couple months ago, it's come roaring back already, right? So there really hasn't been the opportunity for them to go acquire something truly. Because people say, oh, they haven't done anything this whole time. But keep in mind, like the 3 share offerings they did last year, that's really most of their cash. But then I feel like they also started to come to the understanding, like, okay, we're sitting on like 4.4 billion for the past year or so. Cash does lose purchasing power over time because it doesn't matter who the president is, who's in Congress, who's in what government body. The United States of America always prints money. So if the United States of America always prints money, the dollar is going to lose purchasing power over time. So then they probably looked at it like, hey, wait, all these companies are raising capital through 0% interest convertible note offerings. Why don't we just do that to buy Bitcoin and essentially hold Bitcoin as a hedge against the fact the dollar is depreciating in purchasing power? So I feel like they're like, okay, well, we can borrow money at a 0% rate, use that to buy Bitcoin. And in a sense, that's kind of their hedge against their purchasing power depleting. That's kind of where my mind's at right now. And I feel like if they use that full 1.5 billion for Bitcoin, then they'll probably do another convertible note offering. That's honestly my prediction. I feel like they'll buy another $1 billion worth of Bitcoin throughout the rest of this year. And then towards the end of the year, maybe around the time of like reporting Q3, so a couple reports out, they report Q3 earnings, and then they do another convertible note offering for another 1.5 billion, and they buy another 1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin throughout 2026, and again at a 0% rate in terms of the interest. So it's really they're borrowing the money for free, and then also because they're stacked with cash, let's say they don't acquire something over the next couple years, and then the conversion terms get met on the current convertible note offering and the potential future one, then they say like, all right, we'll just pay it back in cash because we can. We don't have to pay it back in shares. And in doing that, EPS technically will go up. Not exactly. It basically would be like the diluted adjusted one. But overall, it would make them more profitable and also just remove that debt, so to speak, right? So really, they have options. They have so much flexibility right now. And something I was kind of saying the other day is that flexibility and sort of uncertainty around exactly how they're going to go about things is really where the opportunity lies, because the bears are saying, oh, well, this thing's not going anywhere because we don't know their plan. And then the bulls are saying, well, they continue to improve their financials and they are going to execute upon their plan as time goes on, and I trust them. So that's a huge gray area. And I feel like that's really where the opportunity was. If there was okay, we're going to buy this amount of Bitcoin, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, I honestly think the stock price would be trading higher, but I don't think people would be betting against it as hard, if that makes sense. So it's kind of a very unique situation, as it's been for a long time with GameStop. And I think that's how, a lot of us got here. For myself, I don't want to tell the same story a million times, but long story short is I made a lot of money in January 2021. I got really, really fortunate. And that's what started my journey. I kept buying options, cycled out of that, just started doing shares. Only around mid last year, I started selling puts as kind of a side income. But that was after I accumulated a lot of GameStop shares for my long-term position and felt good and knowledgeable enough on options to kind of do that in a side portfolio that, again, I keep completely separate from my long-term positions. And that's just what's worked for me, right? So as GameStop's continue to evolve, I'm trying to continue to evolve as well. So it's been really great covering this story, but I'm also, becoming more and more knowledgeable just on financial markets and just being more well-rounded as an individual, right? You guys will see back here. It's what the hell's going on back here? I'm just growing some vegetables because I'm starting to enjoy that as a hobby. And that's weird, right? And I feel like to be the best version of yourself, not to go on too much of a tangent here, you got to be a well-rounded individual, do the little things right and build the lifestyle you want and the habits you want. Because for me, it was I put in my head, I need to do YouTube perfect. I need to do this. I need to know every little thing about finance and this and that. I put all this pressure on myself, and it made me just not want to do it in a way. But once I kind of took a step back, reset, I was let me try and do some other things in my life, such as growing stuff, right? I got some peppers and basil and carrots going right now that are almost ready to harvest. And becoming more well-rounded has made it easier to continue to learn and become more knowledgeable. I hope that makes sense. I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but the point is, sometimes trying too hard is like not good in a sense. Like, of course you want to give it your all, but sometimes you have to realize like you got to take your time, right? And it used to feel like, especially the early days of GameStop, for example, of like acquiring shares, I got to get more as fast as possible. I got to get more as fast as possible. Now I'm like, okay, I got a pretty good amount of shares that I'm pretty content with. I'm going to do this option selling thing, collect a little premium, and continue to buy shares, right? Because there's going to be ups, there's going to be downs. I'm not going to rush and put it all in at once, right? So it's all about really finding yourself. And by focusing closely on GameStop and learning a lot about one company, I feel like for myself and a lot of individuals out there, it's taught myself, I can only speak for myself for sure, but I feel like it's the case for other people, where you learn a lot about just the financial markets as a whole, the concept of building wealth, then even Bitcoin, although I've been holding Bitcoin, long before GameStop got involved in it. And I'll continue to buy Bitcoin because I'm honestly a true believer that it's not your keys, it's not your crypto. Not saying I think GameStop's, doing anything in the wrong, but I think the only way to truly custody your Bitcoin is to have a cold wallet and just buy it on a hot wallet and continue to transfer to a cold wallet for the long term, right? But again, that's just me. That's just how I rock and roll. And you gotta march to the beat of your own drum sometimes. That's just how it goes. Be nice. I don't pay attention on the movement price in IV. Let's see. I would use the diluted share amount. Your thesis and approach reminds me a lot of Richard Newton. John, thanks, I guess. I'll take that as a compliment. Richard's a cool guy. Yeah, he's very, honestly, don't watch him a lot. Once in a while, I tune in for videos, see what he's saying. I actually listened to some of his thing on the way to work this morning. I was like, let me hear what Richard's got to say. And yeah, very just sensible approach. And I think, everyone's on their own path, and he's on his own path in a way. I'm on my own path. There's other people out there on their own path. And that's just how it goes, right? That's how it goes. And I try and just do me. And that sounds like corny, and the main thing I'll be keeping an eye on too, just, looking ahead, that this number just continues to trend up. And I think it will. So, already at, what was the net amount? About 40 million. And that was after the impairment charges. It would have been even higher. I think, they could be on track for 250 to 300 million in annual net income this year. That's kind of what I'm ballparking, just thinking ahead. But also it'll depend, what do the store closures look like year over year? Is just SG&A going to continue to stay in the low 200s now? Because, I saw SG&A go down to 270 in Q2 last year. And I was like, great. And then Q3 was like up a little bit. I was kind of like, all right, but then Q4 is around the same. But then I realized, like, wait a minute. Q4, historically is always the most expensive in terms of like operating the business because they do the most business. But then, going back to Q1, I wasn't really entirely sure what to expect. So 220 is a great number. If they can get that even below 200, wow, like that'd be really, really nice. And then as a percentage of sales, it'll probably be even lower. But it's just about doing the little things right. I know it's kind of repetitive, but that's all they can really do, right? That's all they can really do, and take their time. And if you're looking for something to quickly trade, there's always things out there, right? There's always different things out there, but I feel like GameStop's just kind of chugging along. Like every report, they just seem to get a little bit better with their fundamentals. They start to become a little bit more profitable, a little bit more of an interesting story, or I don't want to say more interesting story, but they just continue to march in the right direction. That's what it seems like to me. So very informative. Motion Braid, thanks for being here. Appreciate you. Dang, GME's stuck in a cat box. $9.95 to $28 is the range. Stuck on stocks, thanks for being here. Let's see, where's it trading at right now? Okay, it's kind of near where it was before, just sitting at 28. I feel like we're still in a general uptrend though. I feel like right here was really when it flipped. And it's still crazy to me that, going from here to here, the stock price is up from $10 to $30, or now 28, right? But they issued shares 3 times and did a convertible note offering, yet the stock price is higher. I feel like any other company really wouldn't be able to do that unless it's like an OG MicroStrategy, right? Maybe. So I'll try finding my way of putting my money into GameStop at the right timing. Not sure about shorting, but that's my cup of tea. I think this kind of way is just wrong, but that's just a me problem. Hey, listen, Motion, that's all right. I always say I welcome the bulls, the bears, kangaroos, right? Kangaroo market, that's what they call it when it goes up and down, right? But I feel like overall, in this crazy world that we live in right now, you got to do what's best for you as an individual and your family, because now more than ever, building wealth is so important, right? I'm not even just talking GameStop here. I'm talking just in general. Building wealth is so important because you realize like money is just endlessly created, and that's why it's so important to hold assets. And as a generally younger individual, like I talk to other people my age, like, oh, I don't know though, investing's risky. I'm like, it's literally riskier in my opinion to not invest than to invest, especially if you're just buying like the S&P and you're just throwing it in like a Roth IRA. It's gonna just build over time, right? So, and when you see that the purchasing power is just going down, right? And how you see it in the real world, right? For example, you take like this deck of cards. This might be like $4 right now. And 2 years from now, it's going to cost like $5. And you're like, hey, what? Okay, yeah, it only went up $1, so maybe it's not the best example, but scale that up. It's really a 25% increase. That's a huge increase. If everything's increasing by like 25% every 2 years in price, it gets harder and harder just to exist, right? Just to live. So that's also why I'm so big on Bitcoin, because I feel like the United States of America will never stop printing money, and they're kind of at the point they really can't, right? When you look at what the deficit is and what we spend versus like what we bring in taxes, where can you cut spending? And even if you did cut spending a ton in some way, guess what? It's probably going to hurt the economy. You get a recession, guess what that means? Lower taxes. Still a large deficit anyway. So I really think the world needs Bitcoin. I think that will start to become evident throughout the next 10 to 20 years. Just got dust in my eye or something. And I feel like it's really great that GameStop's holding Bitcoin. And I feel like GameStop has the right approach. Not going to go pure Bitcoin play, pure Bitcoin treasury, just issue convertible note, and all these crazy things MicroStrategy's doing, which, by the way, I really like Michael Saylor, and I like that they have a lot of Bitcoin, but it's just starting to, maybe it's just a gut feeling, right? And lack of understanding with all the new things he's launching, because I haven't fully read into them, but I'm almost starting to be like, all right, this guy's getting a little bit too aggressive with this. Like, he is just creating things out of thin air to raise money to buy Bitcoin, which, like, just, I don't know, just my inner alert systems, like, something just feels a little off here. But again, I haven't truly read into it, so take that with a grain of salt. Read into MicroStrategy and all the different stuff they're doing a lot more. There's a whole lot to unpack there. That's a topic for a different day. And we got the sun coming back out now, of course. Gotta get the shades on because the future's so bright. But just kind of like red flags are going off to me. Are there some red flags? Not red flags, but just like in my brain is like, okay, when it's too good to be true, it usually is. And why is it just so easy for them to raise money left and right and pay dividends? And again, I got to dig into it more. I could be completely off here, but I'm just a little like skeptical. I'm like, it just seems a little too easy for them to raise capital to buy Bitcoin, but I don't know for sure, right? But where I'm circling back here, what I'm trying to say is I like that GameStop's holding Bitcoin as an asset, right? They said like it's a treasury reserve asset to essentially hedge against the idea of the US dollar depreciating in purchasing power, right? Or losing purchasing power over time. But it's like you also don't want to just go rush to spend your money because you do need cash on hand, right? And I think for someone like myself, I built up my emergency fund. I'm always going to keep that. While I'm like, yeah, I could get better returns in the market, but it's an emergency fund. I want to have that cash on hand. And while it's not exactly the same for GameStop as a business, it's the idea that you could have some Bitcoin as part of your company as a whole, but you don't need to go full Michael Saylor, full like Bitcoin investment company. So I feel like we'll start to see more and more companies continue to acquire Bitcoin on their balance sheet. You know, this is something I think we'll see throughout the next decade and eventually countries as well. Well, they'll acquire Bitcoin on their balance sheet, but it won't always be through a 0% convertible note offering. It'll be, okay, we want it just as an asset on our balance sheet, you know, to kind of just hold value, but not be in pure cash, if that makes sense. And I feel like that's why we're kind of seeing that with, it seems like a lot of Japanese-based companies are kind of either going with the Bitcoin treasury approach or they're just holding some Bitcoin because the yen has historically just continued to lose value over time, right? And that's because Japan's debt to GDP is like 260%. So a lot of different stuff there I was kind of saying, but overall, I like where GameStop's at. I like the direction they continue to head in, right? So very slowly but surely, right? And you got all these different little things going on here. say like an idiot in French operations taking place, insiders buying shares, buying Bitcoin, lower SG&A. Still working on the revenue problem. I wouldn't even call it a problem, but revenue declining. It's like eventually you got to at least bring that to a halt or keep revenue steady, right? And I have faith they'll get there. But as long as EPS is still going up for the time being, I can live with it. I can totally live with it. And margins, which it's really encouraging to see that collectibles went from about 15% of total sales to nearly doubling to like 29% year over year for Q1. Right after Ryan Cohen comes out, rare Ryan Cohen interview at the Bitcoin conference and says we had to diversify away from just video games. And they're evidently doing that, right? And I think they'll continue to do that with Matt Turner on the board, which it'd be pretty sweet if he bought some shares. It'd be a nice vote of confidence, but if he doesn't, so be it, his loss. And he probably is going to get some compensated. Maybe we'll see a future filing on that, I would imagine, possibly, potentially. But given that he works for PSA, or not works for PSA, he's CEO of Collectors, which is the parent company of PSA, he has a lot of influence there, right? He can't just make every decision, but he's really guiding what's happening at PSA, and he can keep in touch with GameStop and make sure GameStop's in front of the 8 ball about any potential changes on the PSA grading process or anything of that nature. And I was kind of guesstimating here, although I feel like these numbers weren't the most accurate of what they made on it. And, this Sultan guy, he had like one meeting with him. Maybe they're the convertible note buyers. I'm not even sure, but I don't even know what his deal is. Like, he just is like this like total Chad, like on Twitter. But I don't even know what's going on with him these days. But I wonder if there'll ever be something coming out. So, but remember, also, take the tinfoil with a grain of salt. I've been saying this a lot lately. Like, too much tinfoil is bad for the brain. I'm telling you. You could drive yourself crazy. Like, if I see another thing about Roaring Kitty being Greg 62345 because of the hot dog and this and that, oh my gosh. It's just silliness, right? It's just silliness. And listen, it's fine to speculate. It's the internet. People are going to do that. But I just feel like anyone who's not truly closely following the GameStop story and just looking at things at a glance, like, that's what's popping up in their feed. And there's nothing I can do to stop that, right? I'm just stating what I see going on. They get the occasional GameStop post in their feed. Guess what? It's always something about like Roaring Kitty's Greg or some. This is because of this, because of that, and then they're like, "What the hell?" Then they won't even look into GameStop because they think it's just a whole boatload of nonsense. But also, that's their loss. That's their approach, right? But for me, I really just focus on what the company's doing and any news that comes out and what the numbers are, and it's, to me, just a really much simpler approach. And like I said, I'll sell some puts now as I've become more comfortable with it. Again, separate from my long-term positions. And that's really because GameStop kind of trades in these ranges, and I sell the puts out of the money, and I cash secure them, roll them if necessary. On occasion, I've had to sell a call, which, breaks my heart. I don't want to have to sell shares of GameStop. But again, that's a portfolio that's entirely separate and that I'm utilizing to essentially be a kind of form of side income. And it took me a while to really, grasp the concepts of options. I mean, I've known about them a long time, but to feel comfortable enough to, and also save up enough to, okay, I'm going to use this chunk of change to do a little bit of trading, and so far it's worked great. And we'll see if that continues to be the case. So, let's see. 5 years ago, GME had a total of 74 to 77 million shares. True. They have 4-for-1 stock split. Oh, let's go back here. Took 4 years how to figure out how to earn through options on these cycles. Yeah, listen. It's all about practice, right? And consistency. This would have been a good earnings report if we had negative 10.8 million operating loss without the asset impairment. With the asset impairment, it's amazing. The next 3 quarters set up for operating profits. Make no mistake, you are not making a mistake there. You're spitting facts. I still don't quite understand how they increased float 5 times while 3 times the price. Is there a thesis that famous shorts just close these offerings? And I can't see the explanation. The float hasn't increased 5x. So yeah, you got to account for the 4-for-1 stock split. But I think there's definitely some short sellers who took the opportunities of shares being offered to accumulate shares. I don't think that's all of them, but I feel like that was part of it. That is my gut feeling, because when you look at how fast those share offerings went through, right? So I kind of summarized them back here. The first one, is this the first one, May? Yes, so the first one was in May last year. They raised a little under $1 billion, average price of 20, 45 million shares issued, right? And then it was in trading days 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 trading days to complete it, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 trading days to sell 45 million shares. Then down here, right, on June 7th, only 3 trading days to sell 75 million shares. Although with this one, there was a lot of volume, but you're going to tell me it was really just all individual investors? And also the news of it initially dropped, and then from there, the price pretty much was just sideways? I just really feel like it had to be largely institutions. Although many argue, oh, it was just individuals because of Roaring Kitty, but I just don't think that's the case. And then another 20 million back here in September. So that was over, it was announced this day, so trading day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 9 or 10 trading days here, right? Because the price started moving up before that, and we got the filing that they completed the offering that afternoon on a Friday. So they've raised a lot of capital, right? Overall, they raised $3.4 billion through the sale of 140 million shares last year, and then they raised another $1.5 billion through a 0% convertible note offering. And I feel like unless the share price goes really high, like 60s, 50, 60, $70 a share, I feel like if they want to raise more capital, they're probably going to stick with the 0% convertible note offering going forward. Because evidently, not even just looking at GameStop, there's a lot of institutions out there that are willing to buy these 0% convertible notes for companies that are raising capital to buy Bitcoin on their balance sheet. So I feel like GameStop could easily do it again. And, keep in mind, when they announced the the only one, convertible note offering, they announced it and then priced it like the very next day. And when they priced it, they had the option, right? So it says 1.3 billion, or it says 1.28 billion, approximately 1.48 billion, if the initial purchaser exercises its option to purchase additional notes in full, which they did, including the exercise, by the way, filing name Project Rocket. Funny enough, on April Fool's too, just joking around, maybe, I don't know, but it doesn't matter. It's just a file name, right? But you gotta love it. You gotta love it. Including the exercise in full of the initial purchaser's option to purchase up to an additional 200 million aggregate principal amount of notes. So they gave him the extra 200 million. They're like, yeah, we'll upsize this. And then GameStop, upon conversion, right? The conversion terms get satisfied. They can pay back in shares or cash or a combination of both, right? So really gives GameStop a lot of flexibility here. And when you're buying like MicroStrategy convertible notes, for example, that they issue, you're for sure getting shares if you're the bond buyer because they don't really keep any cash. With GameStop, it's different. You might get cash, you might get shares, you might get a little bit of both, right? Depending on how things are going and how they're feeling and what's going on at that given point in time. I don't think they, particularly in my opinion, I don't think they have a set plan of like, oh, well, we're definitely going to pay it back when the conversion terms are met in shares or cash or a combination. I don't think they have that predetermined necessarily. I think they're going to see where they're at and how they're operating upon the conversion terms being met, and then the buyer saying, hey, okay, we're converting. They'd be like, what's the deal? But again, just one man's opinion. Let's see, catching up here on like AMC. GME's been smart how they increased the share count. Couldn't agree more. Gobs of cash and raised the floor. Forgot the negative department. It's near impossible for GME to go bankrupt. The only way shorts can win, they're still stuck. Make no mistake, they have around 180 million. When the overall narrative around GME changes, they can't hide anymore and they're screwed. They hide in some bigger event, but it'll happen eventually. Yeah, listen, like I was saying before a little bit, future's so bright. That's why the sun's shining in my eyes. But whatever nonsense is going on behind the scenes or beneath the surface, however you want to look at it, if they just succeed as a company, it will naturally just bubble up to the surface. Whether that's today, tomorrow, next year, next decade, I don't think anybody exactly knows, but all they have to do for GameStop, right, is just succeed. Just drive forward, drive profitability, drive free cash flow, all forwards. And I think they'll continue to do that, and I think they're capable of doing that. GME brainwash as usual. Daniel Matta, thank you for being here. Don't forget to drop a like. Does GME issue guidance, and how was their revenue? Masterscope's vids, thanks for being here. They don't issue guidance. They don't do a conference call. They don't issue guidance. They really go with the approach of don't believe us, just watch, which I know is a little taboo to the Wall Street. They're like, what do you mean you're not going to tell us what you're going to do? They're like, listen, we're just going to do what we think is best. If you want to believe in us, great. Feel free to invest. If not, we'll just keep doing what we're doing. And that's really just their approach, kind of like it or not. Another flop. Mr. Liquid Swords. A flop of positive EPS for the quarter. Buying Bitcoin, having plenty of capital, increased interest income. I don't know about that. But, stock price wise, if you were trading it short term, sure, it's a flop. Call it what you will. But that's just one man's opinion, right? Brainwash, you mean facts. Shares, I think. Net profit. Remember, it doesn't matter if the money comes from interest on cash or sales. Profit is profit. Great point, Scott. You're not wrong at all, man. You're not wrong at all. Profit is profit. That's what it comes down to, right? And sure, people will say, oh, well, interest rates are going to decrease later this year, which are they? They've been saying it for a while. It hasn't quite happened yet. And then Jamie Dimon recently said, oh, I think the Fed's doing the right thing, but not decreasing rates. And everyone's like, wait, what? Huh? So who knows what's happening with that, right? But regardless, I think GameStop's in a great position where they have so much flexibility, right? That's where the opportunity lies, is like their true flexibility to take action as they see fit. And overall, this move is really literally nothing, right? When you zoom out, even just looking at like a one month chart, what's this move downwards? Nothing. This is literally nothing in the grand scheme of things. For any short-term trader, it's like, I was trying to make this move, right? But again, keep in mind, just because this is where the price is trading right now, doesn't mean this is where the stock price opens tomorrow or where the price closes by the end of the day tomorrow. Literally anything could happen. Anything could happen. They could file to offer shares, convertible note offering, which again, I don't think they will, but it's not impossible. The stock could just have some demand come in. People recognize, hey, this company is going to continue to be profitable. Let me pick up some shares, right? Institutions maybe think about that a little bit. And sometimes you have to kind of digest a report before you truly see how it goes. And a recent example I can think of is ELF. So their report came out. What is it? So it's right back here. You can see after hours, it was running up into earnings, right? And it was like, oh my God, look, running before earnings. After, by the way, like a massive dip before. But it was running, going into earnings. And then, gotta get the pre-market and post-market. You see after hours, it dipped way down. And then it came roaring all the way up, right? All the way back. And it turned out investors were like, at first, oh, this is not good. Then they heard the news of like an acquisition they made and some other information. Oh, actually, this is good, right? So sometimes it takes time for like the market to digest and truly react in the way it should. But also, you just don't know, right? It could go down tomorrow. It could float in the mid-20s for next few weeks, right? I really think that's a very real possibility. But if that happens, so be it, right? So be it. I really don't, honestly, I don't see a world, unless we're in a recession scenario, where GameStop goes below like $19, $18 a share. I think it could dip just slightly below 20 in like a really rough situation. But even that, I feel like, is kind of a stretch, right? And if you look at the past year, the lowest we've been was 20, and that was really, or 18, right? And that was really during a kind of flash crash. If you remember back here, August 5th was the yen carry trade situation where the market just tanked for like 2 or 3 days, and all of a sudden it was like nothing happened. And that's basically what this era was back here. And then obviously, keep in mind too, GameStop ran up to the 30s before even announcing acquiring Bitcoin. And in perfect GameStop fashion, the earnings come out, like, we're going to buy Bitcoin. And it was, oh, this is great. Good EPS. Numbers look good. Oh, we're doing a convertible note offering. And then it starts running up. Are they buying Bitcoin? When are they buying Bitcoin? How much are they buying Bitcoin? And then right here, right, it just starts booming. Actual news comes out of them buying Bitcoin, and just in perfect GameStop fashion, the actual good news comes out, and then it sells off, right? To an extent, but it touched 35. We're still at 28. I feel like they're still in a good spot. And it's easy to say this as, a long-term investor, and also just not putting in more than I can afford to lose. So I'm not stressing about like what it's going to look like in a couple quarters from now. I'm going to analyze, based on the numbers, but I could really just take it nice and easy and go, all right, I'm going to sell some puts here and there for some side income when I see fit, and just continue to keep my long-term shares accumulating and ride that out. And really for me, I'm just consistently looking for fundamentals to get better. I really do want them to continue to acquire Bitcoin now, just on a consistent basis. It doesn't have to be all of their cash. It doesn't have to be endless convertible note offerings. but I really want them to continue to accumulate more Bitcoin on the balance sheet. I think it's a great reserve asset when you realize that the dollar is just endlessly printed, aggressively printed. You need to acquire assets, right? And really, I think as an individual, you should treat yourself as an individual. This is how I do it, as a business, right? So what I do is I put everything I buy, hear me out here, everything I buy on a credit card just to get cash back. And every time I get paid, but I always keep track. I don't just go buying everything with credit cards just for fun, just because I feel like it and don't think about it like a bozo. I buy everything on credit cards. I have a credit card I use at the grocery store where I get 5% back. PayPal has a debit card where you get 5% back on a select category. So I try and optimize my cash back strategy to be the most optimal for when I am going to spend money. And then, so when I get paid every other week, right, every 2 weeks, I go pay off all my credit cards, move a chunk to my savings, move some to my investments to dollar cost average, move some money into Strike to dollar cost average Bitcoin, and then I go from there, right? And I follow that consistent process each week. And then on occasion, I'm like, okay, let's put a little bit extra into the market, right? Like back in April, I was fortunate enough to buy the dip on some stocks. And so far that's worked out great, right? Because I saw the dip and I was like, it could dip more. It was going down so fast. And, I didn't perfectly time it, but I was fortunate enough to buy it. But I was like, I just know, like, I feel like I'm going to regret it if I don't buy this dip. And that's not to say the market can't go down again in a few months. And literally anything could happen, especially right now. I feel like there's so much uncertainty. But you got to take advantage, and that's why you need cash on the sidelines for when opportunities arise, and also cash on the sidelines for an emergency fund. And you got to calculate all that different stuff based upon your own personal situation, and nobody knows your situation best besides you. So in a way, in doing all those things and accounting for all those factors, I feel like it's like treating yourself as a business. And that's kind of the approach GameStop has had, because look at Ryan Cohen's letter a couple years ago. He was like, see if I could find it on my page. It was like something along the lines of, how do you search your own? Ryan Cohen, I expect everyone to treat company cash as their own. Let's see if I can find it. No. I'm trying to find the letter. This is from a while ago. Okay, so maybe I can't find it off the top of my head, but basically, I don't know if you guys recall, he wrote that letter to employees a while back that somehow got leaked. I'm sure someone leaked it to the press, right? That's just how it goes. But basically said, we are basically around the time he became CEO. Actually, it might have been his letter when he became CEO. I expect everyone to treat the company cash as if it's their own, and we need to be extremely cost efficient, is the gist of what it said. So, you should take a page out of GameStop's book in that you want to have a good personal balance sheet, right? You don't want to have debt unless it's good debt, right? So the good debt that I have on my, personal balance sheet, I guess you could call it, is I have a student loan. One student loan left. I paid off all the rest that were higher interest. I have one small student loan. It's a very minimal amount. I could pay it off tomorrow if I wanted. But the interest rate is only 2.5% on it. So why would I go pay that off immediately when I can earn 4% in a money market account? Keep that money as part of my emergency fund. If it ever gets to a point I can't earn more than 2.5%, okay, then maybe I'll go pay off my debt, right? And that's a very simple example and just kind of how it worked out for me. If that debt was a 6% rate, 7% rate, I already would have paid it off by now. I've been done with it, right? So I'm just fortunate. And again, it's a really minimal amount. And then you got to have cash. You got to have a mix of alternative assets, right? And for me, alternative assets are Bitcoin. I don't really bother with gold. And then cards, right, that I've partly bought from GameStop and partly already had that I've just been accumulating. And for me, it's mostly sports cards, right? Because that's what I'm into and what I'm most aware of. So I have cash on my balance sheet. I got low-cost debt, sort of, right, so to speak. And it's for education, so I felt like it was worth it. And then got alternative assets in Bitcoin and trading cards. And then I got stocks. I got my 401k, pretty much the S&P. I got some IRAs. I got my GameStop shares. Another stock I've been buying for the past several months now is AMD. And it's finally starting to move, right? Oh, nice afternoon today. I didn't even check it. I'm caught up in GameStop. And it's just been a long-term downtrend, and I just feel like they have so much upside. They're going to catch up to NVIDIA a little bit, and really just the next chapter of AI, they really have an opportunity to make some good money on that. But we're not going to get into that too much today. I'm going to talk about it in the future because I'm learning a lot about AMD, and I just really like what they're doing, and I really like Lisa Su and the management team over there. I feel like they really do a good job of operating, and while the stock hasn't performed that great over the past couple of years, their numbers still look good. And I feel like they're spending on research and development in the best way possible, right? But I digress. We're talking GameStop today. But point being, you got to evaluate your own situation. And just like GameStop, evaluates their balance sheet and fundamentals and continues to improve that, I feel like you got to apply that to your own life. Not trying to relate everything to GameStop, but generally speaking, it's true, right? It's true. And it gets a lot easier because... And everyone's situation is different, right? I'm very fortunate. I'm a younger individual, and I've been building up, and I was lucky enough to make all my silly mistakes in the stock market and everything, right? You name it, I tried it when I was younger, right? And because I got involved in this stuff in high school, not knowing what I was doing, but lucky enough, I didn't have parents didn't just say, here, take all your savings and do whatever you want, right? They're like, nah, you could keep saving that for college, and then when you're a little older, you could do what you want, but you're in high school, just do whatever. I tried day trading crypto, Forex, complex options, all this crazy stuff, right? Everything. Even remember BitConnect in those days? I was silly enough to buy it, guys. I was silly enough. I was like, I'll just put $50 in it, right? But thankfully, I was just a stupid kid, right? Or I don't want to say stupid kid, but I was a stupid kid. Don't get me wrong. I made a lot of mistakes. I mean, not anything horrible, but point being, I made my silly mistakes with small amounts of capital. So I always kind of suggest to people who are trying to get involved in markets or investing in any form, starts way smaller than you think you should. Or even just do the paper trading, right? And it's people who get impatient, right? We're impatient creatures as humans, but you got to just take it slow and steady. It's really the best approach. There is no get rich quick tactic that works. There just isn't. You could get lucky sometimes, right? I got real lucky back in January 2021 with an option. Real lucky, right? But believe me, I got burned on plenty of options leading up into that. And that was everything was shut down during that period. And I was I'm becoming, Tetron day trader. I was I know this. I'm checking these charts. And then I was nah, I'm good on that. But that's kind of my story. A lot of different things there. But Elf ran because of Hailey Bieber. That is true, Dom. That is true. I didn't realize how big of a brand that was. And I asked my girlfriend about it. And she's like, yeah, it's huge. It's crazy. And I was like, oh, cool. Tetron, I just want to drop a thank you for your coverage and analysis. Really enjoying your streams. As someone mentioned, Richard, and you seem to know him. Do you know Eric from Outlier Trading? Thomas, thank you for being here. Appreciate the kind words. No, I don't actually. I'll have to look up. What's his name? Eric from Outlier Trading. It's always good to hear different people's opinions, so I'll check them out. Is it Outlier Trading? But yeah, appreciate you being here, man. The kind words. I'm curious, is there anything about this 2850 level that bounced off it? Is just hovering there? I don't have spot gamma anymore. Honestly, Master, I'm not the right person to ask in terms of trend lines and whatnot. I don't see anything necessarily significant, but maybe there's something there that I'm not quite seeing, right? But yeah, it does. If it can hold this $28, $27, $80 level, if it can hold here, I feel like that's a great sign, right? Just generally speaking, because also that's kind of what the lull was back here once we kind of broke out from early May. But I feel like, worst case scenario over the next couple weeks is it trades down to 25. That's kind of my gut feeling, but I feel like it's going to kind of stay floating around 30s. I feel like tomorrow we're going to be lower. Later in the week, it's going to kind of creep back up to 29, 30, and then next week float around in the 30s, and from there, I don't know. I don't make short-term predictions that much, but I think it's very close. I think it's closer to 2 times the price. Algo seems to respect 2 times the price area pretty well until they adjust the algo anyways. That is true. That's a very good point. It seems to trade between, actually, now that you say that, about 2 times the amount of cash or 2.5 times the amount of cash. Because I remember way back here when it got down to the point where GameStop was $10 a share. At that point, if I'm not mistaken, they had about $4 per share in cash. So it was about 2.5 times. Granted, things have changed since this era back here. But it does, now that you're saying that, it does kind of seem to float around the general 2 times the amount of cash they currently have. It's also a prior support area right before this last run. True. Very true. But at the end of the day, guys, nobody ever truly knows what's going to happen. And you could speculate on the tinfoil all you want. But listen, 0.1% of all tinfoil is ever going to come true. So you should just, while I can't give you financial advice, just look at history. Any theory on any particular date, it literally almost never ever comes true. The one piece of tinfoil I can hear, or one trust me bro that actually came true, was like, I saw like Peruvian Bull tweeted. Someone came up to me at the conference today and said, there's gonna be special news today that I think you're gonna like. And they knew he was a GameStop guy. So he had tweeted that, and I was like, all right, trust me bro, like whatever. But then it actually came out that Ryan Cohen, he did that recorded quick interview that was shown at the Bitcoin conference, and they filed that morning that they officially bought Bitcoin. So that was like the only form of tinfoil I can think that came true. But just think about all this other nonsense we've seen come and go. Forget GameStops, Wu-Tang, the 4chan post. This was the craziest one. The 4chan post was like, after all this time, how is this not some nonsense, right? And listen, there's going to be some things that come true that people say, oh, I told you, but just don't ever get too caught up in things. And just remember, no matter how mentally strong you are or how sharp you are, like we are, and this is what I'm realizing as of late, as humans, like we are naturally emotional creatures, like whether we like it or not. It's just how it goes. So like you have to just sometimes like take a step back and be like, are my emotions getting the best of me here? Is that making me make a monetary decision that I should maybe hold off on? But it all depends, right? It all depends. And when you're looking at fundamentals, it's a lot easier to not speculate as much. So yeah, check him out. He covers GME from time to time, and he's a solid guy. Had a call with Richard some months ago. Was surprised to see Tom Sosnoff from Tasty Treat on his channel as well. Pretty cool. Exactly what I was taking advantage of. Emotion. True. Very true. Yes, sir. But yeah, I'll check him out, Thomas. No, I appreciate you mentioning that. But let's go back to the report. Let's see if there's anything else juicy in here. It's honestly, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, it's pretty tough to go through the report on the spot and try and like accurately cover it. So like I try and just skim through it and just looking at it all for the first time. But as expected, inventory is decreasing as they continue to just, I don't want to say like digress from their legacy business, but just really scale it down to be the most efficient. And current assets, 7.1 billion. So operating lease of right use. So basically, their total leases obviously is continuing to decrease. So let's dig into more. And then SG&A. What was SG&A as a percentage of revenue? Did it show it? No, not specifically, but 10 cents EPS. I'm just really happy this number's positive, to be honest. And if it wasn't for the, asset impairments, they would have been so much more profitable, right? If you add in the asset impairments, which I think they did on the front page here, right? The nice summary. So net income was 44.8 million for the period compared to a loss of 32.3. Excluding the impairment charges and other items, net income was 83.1 million. So really, if we take the 83.1 divided by, just for fun here, the amount of shares outstanding, where is that? Of course it's not catching my eye. Where is it? Okay. We'll do by basic, and then we can do by diluted. Divided by... Really, their EPS would have been about 18 cents per share had the impairment charges not been a factor. So I guess ultimately, I was thinking, going into the report, just kind of reflecting that, they're going to show a one-time gain from the sale of Canadian operations. But now that I'm thinking about it again, I think it's more the situation of what those assets were worth were a little bit inflated on the balance sheet because, it had been the same for like a long period of time, generally speaking. And then even, you look at the number, if it was by the diluted amount, would have been 83.1 divided by the diluted amount of shares, which includes or assumes that the convertible notes are converted into shares, and been about 17 cents per share. So it would have been even stronger, right? And We will see some impairment charges. It looks like in the next quarter if the French sale of operations goes through. But where do we see it? It was on the balance sheet. Prepaid expenses, assets held for sale. So looks like the French business will be a bigger sale than the Canadian one, but we didn't have like an official number on the French one yet. So liabilities held for sale. Okay, so if I'm not mistaken, right, I could be, so definitely double check this, and I'm going to look this up after. The difference of these two numbers, I believe, will be the impairment charge for when the French operation is sold off completely. But again, that hasn't closed yet, so that'll kind of be factored into a future report. And also, just looking ahead already, not to get too far ahead to like 2026, these are one-time charges. So if everything's exactly the same next year, numbers, which I think they'll still trend in the right direction, it won't be that plain and simple, but point being, these are numbers that are one-time things that are not going to impact 2026. So they're just going to keep moving in the right direction, right? Just slowly but steadily, just churning away. And we'll see what do collectibles look like, in the full year report. That's really what I'm excited about. See what collectibles look like year over year. Does it get to the point that one day collectibles is 50% of revenue looking a couple years out? It very well might be. At the same time, though, we're kind of, I guess in a way, in the beginning of a console cycle, sort of. I guess it really is debatable because you got the Switch 2 that just came out. That should be a nice little boost. And it seems like, just seeing pictures online, you got to take that with a grain of salt, right? That GameStops are busy. I feel like my local GameStop has been, I would say, generally speaking, busier than previous times I've went. I mean, not previous time, but just generally over the past several months. And since implementing PSA grading and seeing more, and each time I go there, I feel like I see more and more trading cards on the wall they have, it's almost half the store at this point that's really based on collectibles. But then also you have the new PlayStation, Xbox, I think coming next year, if I'm not mistaken. So that's kind of even more major console cycle than the Switch. So this is kind of just like a teaser. So that should also be a nice boost next year. And hopefully between the PSA stuff, maybe they find a way to implement something else related to collectibles, right? I saw like grading video games and comic books is something that Collectors does, which is, again, the parent company of PSA. So maybe they can get that implemented into the GameStop's grading process in some way, and that's just another way to expand. So maybe between that and the console cycles next year, and again, I think it's next year, new PlayStation, Xbox come out, revenue could be flat year over year or even up. And that would be really encouraging. And then if EPS is also still moving up to along with that, love it. Would love it. So we'll see though, right? All we can do is just see what the numbers are. And now we got 3 more months. Start the countdown until the next set of numbers come out. But keep in mind, we're already halfway through Q2, right? We won't get the numbers until 3 months from now. It'll be like the first or second week of September that we get the reported Q2 numbers, which of course I'll be live. And by the way, those of you that missed it, I am live every Friday around 5 p.m. Pretty much as soon as I get home from work, pop on, talk about whatever happened with GameStop that week. And I'll always report on earnings live. I always make sure I get off work a little early that day, go in a little early, do what I got to do. And I'm like, got to cover these numbers live upon release because it's fun. And I love covering the story. And I love the stock. That's all I can really say. So what does that next report look like? I think it's going to look pretty good. Just kind of thinking ahead. I think net sales, let's see. What were they back here? I'm going to have to update these charts. That's going to take some work. Net sales was lower in Q2 last year than Q1. So will that trend kind of continue? Probably, right? But I feel like because Q2 is the summer, I could see Q2, right, being a number similar to what we just got, right? So the net revenue was $732 million. Could we see $732 million in Q2 for 2025? That would be a relatively less decrease. Maybe that's something we see, right? Partly because of Switch 2 and just PSA success, because remember, PSA grading and cards wasn't a thing Q2 last year for them. So kind of just thinking ahead on some of that stuff, but could be the case. Shouldn't have bought at $340 straight calls. Damn, yeah, Carl, that's an aggressive move, my friend. That's an aggressive move. And I just feel like every time with GameStop, anyone who buys options going into the earnings, whether it's put buyers or call buyers, tend to get burned. Like, it just seems like the last several reports, they're really, with the exception of the last one, and it really was just because of the convertible note offering, right, which was back here. Besides that, like, on news of the actual earnings, the stock really hasn't been moving too dramatically, like one way or another, enough to like make money on options. So, well, it depends. But let's pretend you bought leaps. Yeah, that's a different story, maybe. So then you'd be okay. But I feel like, yeah, if you're gonna buy calls, you got to go long term, especially with GameStop, or I don't know, in general, right? It's just the thing about options is you got to realize when you're buying an option, you're fighting against time decay. And when you're selling an option, time is on your side. So obviously the price movement is a factor, but that's just generally speaking, you know, when a stock moves sideways, if you bought an option, you're going to lose money. If you sold an option, you're going to make money, right? Again, just generally speaking there. But I'm trying to think, anything else major that I want to touch on? So that small loan they have from the French government is almost entirely paid off at this point. I think there's like a very minimal amount. Proceeds from issuance of convertible debt, debt issuance costs from convertible debt. So this was like why they got only 1.48 billion. You know, about 20 million went to whoever facilitated it, kind of just normal expense. Then we go back to the balance sheet. Is there anything left on the long-term debt? So the long-term debt is 1.4807. The amount raised is, wait, let's do the difference. 3. So is this number match right here? Yes. Okay. So what this means is at this point, they paid off their really tiny loan for the French government associated with their response to the pandemic, which, by the way, was literally like a 1% interest rate. So it was such a minimal amount, and they just slowly paid it off the past several years. So now at this point, the only long-term debt on the balance sheet is the capital they raised from the convertible note offering. So just worth keeping that in mind. See, I bought some puts, so don't hate me so much. It's kind of been a pattern there, these run-ups and sell after the catalyst. Listen, Master, I can live with it. It is what it is. Like I said, I welcome the bulls, I welcome the bears, I welcome the traders, I welcome all, right? Everyone's got to do their own thing. As long as you feel comfortable with what you're doing, I feel like that's the most important, and you're managing your risk in your own way. That's the best way to go about it. But of course, I gotta be honest, I like the stock long term. Sell put and trade the wheel. Hey, Mike, yeah, nothing wrong with the wheel strategy, right? That's really kind of what my selling strategy is, right? Although I feel like going forwards, I probably would rather just roll puts. I have had to sell calls on occasion, but then even when that happens, like I just turn around and sell a put again. And it's just a very active portfolio, which I found for me, I would much rather keep that like entirely separate from my long-term position, just because I don't want it to mix up in any which way. And yeah, you know, it's a little side thing. It's not anything major, but as someone who's, you know, interested in the markets and following things closely, it's something I feel comfortable doing on an active basis, especially when I'm following GameStop very closely. It's the reason I feel like it's the stock I'm most familiar with. Like I tried it with Mara, it didn't go well in terms of selling options. I got lucky on one like Tempest trade, but then another one I'm looking at that maybe I'll do it on in the future because I like SoFi, but I'm not the most confident in like extreme long-term success. But I feel like they'll keep driving forward. So maybe this one, like in a situation where GameStop's just ripping, I don't want to be chasing the price action trying to sell put. Maybe I'll go sell SoFi, but right now I've kind of just been selling puts on GameStop when I see fit, and I keep that again entirely separate from a long-term position, and I'm not like over forcing it, because if I'm not, so be it. I'll just let the money sit in a money market account, accumulate some interest for the time being. But yeah, and also that's, to be clear too, that's not what I consider like my emergency fund. I keep that entirely separate. Can you tell me what you expect their path to profitability is long-term? All right, yeah, so what I see is, so really we'll pull up the charts here. I think this is the best way to do it. I think really improving the margins and collectibles is their path to profitability, because they would have been operationally profitable here, right? As they mentioned, excluding the impairment charges and other items, adjusted operating income was 27.5 million for the period. So the loss was 35.5 million. But if they didn't have those impairment charges, they would have been operationally profitable. So they're basically right there, right? And historically speaking, Q1 is their weakest quarter. And we saw their gross margin, right, as a percentage of revenue, 34.5%. Excuse me, that's the strongest it's been since Ryan Cohen's been head of the chief, or whatever you want to call it. I can't. Or captain of the ship. That was the term I was looking for. Since then, this is the highest gross margin they've posted, right? So, I'll move this over. Ooh, sun. It's such a weird day. It was literally raining the whole day, and then all of a sudden, on cue, GameStop reports earnings. The sun is out. You know why? The future's bright. The sun said it. Not even me. Not even me. My sources. My sources are good, guys. Trust me. Sources say GameStop's a good stock. And then operating loss, so it was 1.5 again, really because of the impairment charges. And then the net margin ultimately was 6.1%. So the interest income is really what's padding their net margin right now. But I think there's nothing wrong with that because, as Scott in the chat mentioned before, profit is profit. But in terms of operationally, right, I think they do have to consistently be profitable. And it's not like, oh, they can only be profitable from the net income. But I think operationally, the push into collectibles is really what's pushing the gross margin up, which is in turn pushing the operational margin up. So I feel like they keep, pushing in that direction. It's not necessarily going to get to the point where operational margin is like 20% and net margin is like 25% or something, unless they implement something or they acquire another business and put it as part of things that's much more profitable. I feel like they're mostly they're going to keep steadily improving margins, steadily improving profitability, but they're going to really go with the approach. I really feel like this is what they're going to do. They're going to go with the approach of buying Bitcoin and buying other assets when they see fit. Whether that be other cryptos, I honestly hope not. I'm personally like a big Bitcoin maxi. Like, I love that video of Michael Saylor where it's like, there is no second best. Or have you guys ever seen that meme someone made? It's like the guy talking to the girl in the bar, like, and she clearly is not interested. But then someone did the voiceover with Michael Saylor's voice. What do you mean second best? There is no second best. It's like, that I can relate to that, right? Although my girlfriend knows I love Bitcoin. Shout out to her if she's listening. But basically, I see them going with the approach of becoming a modern day Berkshire Hathaway. I feel like that term, the Gameshire Stopway kind of makes it sound like a meme. But low-key, I feel like that's really their approach, right? Where they're like, okay, we're going to become a modern Berkshire Hathaway. We're going to buy Bitcoin. We're going to keep improving the legacy business. But then we have cards essentially as an alternative asset, right? Because if they're not selling cards, they have, and by the way, it seems like they have more and more cards available for sale on the website every time I check. And again, when I go into the stores, more and more boxes of cards available. So in a way, all cards are alternative assets because generally speaking, they're going to hold their value and go up generally, right? It's not always that plain and simple. But then also I feel like they're going to find a couple other things to get involved in over the next couple of years. And I understand some people are like, well, why haven't they done that yet? I think they don't want to overpay, right? They want to make sure they get a good deal. And also, the past year, with the exception of like the past couple months or like the little dip in April, whatever you want to call it, they really have been in a situation where it's been like a mega bull market. Valuations just feel inflated, right? Generally speaking, just across the board. But it's kind of felt like that for a while, right? But they raised a lot of their capital between June and September of last year. So I don't think, if they haven't used it yet, it's not like, oh, they're just not going to use it. I think they're just like, okay, take our time, because it's better to wait on using the capital than rush into using it and overspend on something or hop on an opportunity that's actually not that good, and we didn't recognize that because we didn't do enough due diligence and research, right? For all we know, they could be looking at a potential acquisition in discussion, but that could take months, right, before that actually closes and comes out. So all just in theory, but I think ultimately, they're going to improve margins and the profitability, but I think they're going to try and acquire assets, and eventually it'll be like GameStop holding company, the GameStop legacy business, Bitcoin, and then other things they acquire. That's kind of my general idea and sense of like the direction they're going in, and also why they just want like lower overhead costs as a whole. So we'll see if it shakes out that way. I don't it's not a guarantee that that's the case. But keep in mind, the investment policy was added years ago at this point, prior to them amending it to reflect adding Bitcoin. So I feel like that was kind of indication that that was their long-term thought process. But they're like, listen, we're not going to rush it. And when they initially implemented the investment policy, I feel like they were still transitioning the business and still trimming a lot of fat. While they're still doing that to an extent right now with like the international operations, I feel like they're pretty much at the point, like it's like you can't trim forever. And I feel like myself and some other people have said, like, oh, the trimming's almost done, like back in 2023, early 2024. But evidently, like, they continue to find more. And you have to also keep in mind that when you zoom out even further, that when Ryan Cohen became captain of the ship and he brought his own people in, they wiped out the old board. The old business model, right, or the old structure of the business, they didn't even have good retail technology in place to keep track of, like, okay, well, how much of this product is selling in this store? How much of this product is selling in this region? How much of this product do we sell online versus in stores? They didn't even have that data. So they needed, how I see it at least, is they needed like 2022, 2023 to really gather that data and then see, like, 2022, 2023 is probably more obvious what they should wind down and close out because it's just clearly not making money. But then what they've been closing throughout 2024 and the international operations, I feel like they needed to get that retail data to make more informed decisions. But they just didn't have that before because the old management team just wasn't upgrading things. Think about it. They were buying back shares, which, was, I have mixed feelings about that, about when they bought back shares back in like 2019. Because it was so aggressively shorted. That was when Michael Burry wrote the letter to the board saying they should buy back shares. But also, like, they didn't evolve their technology, right? Like, something I always go back to that I have notes on here. They implemented SAP retail technology, and then there's this thing called Yobik, which is like way back here. I wish I put a date on this, but this was a long time, right? So nothing like groundbreaking, right? Okay, accept. So nothing groundbreaking. This was back in 2024, and then SAP retail technology was in 2022, I believe. But this is more like automation based, and like as all the AI stuff started coming out. But if you read it, it says the motivation behind GameStop's move to Yobik, as shared by Matt Goodfriend, I don't know if he's still with the company, stemmed from challenges posed by a disconnected tech stack. The company previously relied on various point solutions that lacked cohesion and did not offer streamlined functionality. Pointed out the critical issue of being unable to harness real-time analytics effectively, which limited their ability to make data-driven decisions. The fragmented nature of their previous systems made it difficult to track and improve key performance indicators, KPIs, and overall store performance efficiency. So look when this is from. About a year and a half ago, right? And now we see them, still making these moves. People are, how did they realize they should wind down these operations before? Because they probably were trying to figure it out, to be honest. Trying to have enough data to make the informed decisions necessary and not just close it all down just because it seems like it's not good, right? They wanted to have like clear information and trends, and obviously like things shift in the world too in that time. But just another example of them just doing all the little things right. And then speaking of doing the little things right, I want to see more private label brands. I really like the idea of CandyCon. I want to see them do something else, right? Like another couple private label brands. I like how they have, like GameStop branded merch in the store of just different cords and simple stuff. Some game cases and stuff like that. Not game cases, like a Switch case, I think they have, things of that nature. The Raptor 8 controller, Mod Retro exclusive. Do some more stuff like this. I think it's a great thing. I think people want to buy GameStop, and it encourages people who are, not necessarily, like they're still in the process also of repairing their brand image, because you got to keep in mind the way it was poorly run meant in like 2018, 19, 2020 even, people would have poor experiences and they're like, I'm never going back to GameStop again. And now they could go, okay, it's not the same as it once was, right? So they're still working on that as well. But when you have GameStop exclusives that incentivize someone to come in, they could see like, okay, it's not like how it used to be, how I imagined it like a long time ago, right? And I don't think they should just make anything, in-house. But generally speaking, when you're making in-house products, as in like it's their own brand, that basically means that they're going to get a higher margin because they don't have to buy it from a third party, right? Again, that's generally speaking. We don't know the specific margins on CandyCon, and CandyCon is not or no single private label is going to just move the needle and like boost revenue a ton, but it just continues to push them in the right direction and just do the little things right. And it's always good to look back. So these were thoughts I had a long time ago, but just some of the things I was mapping out that management's done. They let go of overpaid executives, got rid of that trash BCG from their consulting fees, right? Dramatically cut overhead costs, narrow down to one warehouse in Texas, right? So they strictly ship everything out of there, or they ship from the stores in some scenarios. Added Yobic technology and SAP, essentially no debt. Now that's kind of changed because it's 0% debt. Established a GameStop credit card, which to me was crazy. They didn't have a credit card beforehand. Like every store you go to, they always are trying to sell you on the credit card. I worked for Marshalls for a long time and always be like, hey, you want to save 10% today? Sign up for a TJX credit card. You can save 10% off today, then you get $10 back on every $200 you spend. And I had to do this whole pitch, right? And then I eventually worked my way up to become manager, and I had to like push the team to get more credit cards and all this. So it was kind of shocking that GameStop didn't have a credit card prior to Ryan Cohen being involved. And it even took them a little bit of time to get it established, but they did. And I think every retailer does, so they should too. And they changed the GameStop Pro plan from $15 to $25. Just a nice little bump there, that increased the annual revenue, nothing too crazy. I think for what the plan's offering, it's still a great deal. Because think about it, if you're paying $25 a year, but you get a $5 monthly coupon to use. So just by going to GameStop 12 times, you could spend $60. You could basically get $60 for free, and you're only spending $25. So, and especially if you're going to go there anyway, and even if you don't use all the coupons, even if you just like use 7 or 8 of them, and like 4 or 5 of the months you don't go, it still puts you in the green. And also, you get discounts here and there, and it's some nice little perks, and it's good for keeping the brand loyalty. Obviously, PSA cards, CandyCon, Mod Retro. They talked about the retro GameStops, but I never really saw anything on that. So I don't know if anyone has any insight on that. Feel free to drop it in. I don't know if it's more of like the retro approach, but I remember, that kind of reading that again. I'm like, whatever kind of happened with that, right? But yeah, as you can see, I got a lot of different thoughts over this saga, and this is a great app. If you guys are wondering what this is, it's called Obsidian. Not sponsored by them or anything, so free ad for them, I guess. But this app has been great for me for like organizing my ideas, like any like stock research I do, right, or anything. Like I got to clean it up a little. I've gotten lazy with all my notes and pictures, but it's great. You could put web pages in here. You could put pictures, screenshots, notes, right? You could do all kinds of different stuff. And for me, it's really helped me with like keeping track of everything. So I really try and consistently update it because there's always so much going on, and it's hard to look back and remember what was I thinking here or when. So it's nice to kind of create a timeline. And speaking of a timeline, I'll write this down so I don't forget. I want to create the ultimate GameStop timeline from 2020 to present and just mark like every little thing that's happened with the company from then until now. But ultimate, my to-do list, GameStop timeline. Let's see. We're losing. Possibilities are almost endless. They have $6 million in cash. If you do this again, Equator does not give a fuck about shareholders. If you sell and get out, you should go play in the middle of it. GME's already approved a $300 million buyback and acquisition or merger will force shorts to close their positions. Mike, I think it really depends. It really depends, man. Every week for 3 years, people have said shorts are being forced to close. They have infinite liquidity. They don't have to close. That's kind of true. I think we've kind of learned that the hard way in a sense, right? Where it's like, there's always more liquidity out there. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy. And even, what's that thing of that clip from the guy at the Federal Reserve is infinite liquidity. Infinite liquidity. It's like that little edit somebody made. Hello, Captain Price. What up, what up? It's a glorified SPAC without any good ideas. Sure, James, you could say that, but I think they're continuing to move in the right direction with profitability. They do the little things right. They acquire Bitcoin. And sure, you could say it's a SPAC in a sense that they got a lot of cash, but that's where the opportunity lies, right? And that's where the opportunity is for them to drive forward and for people to buy in for upside. That's just how I look at it, but it's also fine for people like yourself. You can go ahead and short it if you'd like, but I can't stop you. Not quite, Jamie, but pretty close. Can you add Morant's rants on the list to get rid of? No, it's okay. All good. No ill will. Listen, everyone's going to have their own opinions. That's all right. And honestly, for me, guys, I just march to the beat of my own drum. I just do my own thing. keep rocking and rolling. And yeah, that's all I can really say. But I'm also curious, just looking ahead, to next year, what does this total store count look like? I really have a hard time thinking. We see another number, like 23% of all stores closed. So we see a lot of it really was Europe and the United States for store closures. But Canada and Australia were very minimal amounts. And now obviously Canadian businesses sold off. French business is about to be sold off. But I feel like this number next year, we might see store closures might be about down 10% year over year, closer to even 5%. I feel like they're really going to start to limit store closures, and it would only really be based on like new data that kind of comes in that shows like, hey, like it's just not working in this region, or hey, these 3 locations are all on the brink of profitability and they're all in the same vicinity. We should probably close one to push those 2 over the hump. But that's kind of just where my thoughts are right now on that. And then this was what they had last time, right, in the report on the 10K for the business strategy and investment policy. And you can see that changed a little in this one. And God, the sun is annoying right now. So let's see, investment policy. So let's see where the investment. Okay, so business priorities. And notice now they changed it. It was the same in the last report, but they changed it in the last report where cash and other sources of liquidity to maximize shareholder value, including through potential investment and or acquisition opportunities and optimizing our retail business to achieve profitability. That's really what they made the priority, and they don't really talk about the retail business anymore. So that's also what kind of leads me to believe they're going more with the approach of like trying to be a holding company, like have the legacy business, make sure it's as strong as possible, but also buy Bitcoin and seek out other things to buy, right? So unanimously authorized revised investment policy. In accordance with the investment policy, the board delegated authority to manage the company's portfolio of securities. So let's see if there's any changes from the last time. So there was, it's gonna be a little too tiny to read, but let's see, in accordance, so actually we'll just read it from here. So it's more zoomed in. Consisting of the company's chairman, executive officer, Ryan Cohen, as well as 2 independent members of the board, together with such personnel and advisors, investment committee may further choose. The investment committee regularly reviews and risks related to the company's investment portfolio, including concentration risk. When allocating cash to various investment opportunities and considering related investment risk, the investment committee considers market-based factors, including adjusted after-tax yields. When reviewing concentration risk, the investment committee considers the liquidity needs of the company, among other things. Investments are made in accordance with the guidelines of the investment policy that is reviewed at least annually, with oversight conducted by the investment committee and other senior executives of the company. Overall goals of the investment policy. Okay, so this is new, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I don't see anything about goals in the last one. The overall goals of the investment policy are to provide sufficient liquidity to meet day-to-day financial obligations of the company and to optimize investment returns within the guidelines of the policy. Permissible investment instruments, including cash and cash equivalents, bank obligations, money market funds, commercial paper, fixed income securities, obligations of U.S. Treasury and U.S. government, tax obligations, corporate bonds, equity securities, limited to those listed on the New York Stock Exchange, ARCA, or the NASDAQ stock market, and in compliance with the listing standards of the applicable exchange, and certain cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin. Individual exceptions to the investment policy may only be made by the unanimous agreement of the investment committee, or if the investment committee is unable to reach unanimous agreement on such exception by the board. And then obviously on March 25th, they amended it where they could buy Bitcoin with a portion of their cash. But overall, this is new, right? This is new. And, right, let me double check over here. I don't see anything about buying with cash, right? Is there anything that they could buy? They really never mentioned anything about publicly traded stocks, right? In the public, yeah, I don't see anything about that in here. So that is definitely interesting. And that makes me feel even more strongly that they're going to buy, probably not buy something else out, but probably buy shares in something, right? What do they go buy shares in? AMD, SoFi, NVIDIA, Apple, Google, who knows, right? Who knows what the possibilities are. But I remember a while back when they said we're trying to be a tech company. I would imagine if they're going to buy shares in a stock, it would be a tech company. As someone who owns AMD, I guess I'm biased. I would like them to own AMD. The company who just bought AMD actually has shares of it as part of their holdings is actually Amazon. So Amazon holds shares of AMD. They also hold shares of, what is it, like Rivian that they're backing or something. I would say that's something I wouldn't want to see the company mess with in terms of GameStop. I wouldn't want to see them get into like the EV stuff. I feel like there's just too much speculation there. And look at any EV company from this era back here. I remember everyone's like, oh, what's the next Tesla? Is it Lucid, Rivian? Look at any of those names, right? Any of those names. So, but that's really, really interesting. The update to the investment policy, really, really interesting, and makes me think they are going to buy shares. But also, what does Ryan Cohen currently own? Isn't it like Wells Fargo, Alibaba, a few other things? I think I can't remember it off the top of my head. I think he's still a shareholder in Apple. Although, what's the deal with that new Apple update? I'm a little behind on that, but it seems like they're falling behind. And then they wrote that paper that they're like, oh, AI is overrated. It's not what, you'd think it would be, or it's not as it seems. And it's like, are they just saying that because they're behind? Maybe, potentially. I'm not sure. But let's see, GameStop will post an operating profit this year. I totally agree. Paying for their yachts so when Bitcoin crashes. So when you don't have any original ideas, you just become a hedge fund. Do you see any other company doing this, James? I don't know of any other company that's been able to turn around the legacy business, trim all the excess, shift to profitability, raise a ton of capital, and then have the option to buy different things. Appreciate your hard work in the GME community. I already know that the Loose League brands are trolling your account to use your DD for their own purposes. Listen, Captain, everyone out there's got an opinion, and that's just the reality of the internet, man. That's just the reality of the internet. And I just focus on my own kind of situation over here, and that's just really, I think, the best way to go about it. And everyone out there's got an opinion. There's even the meltdowners, right? They got an opinion. They're still out there. There's the traders, the investors, the YouTube people, the Reddit people, the X people. So there's people on Instagram. I don't really go on there, right? And that's just the way she goes. And I just want to keep covering the story because I like the stock and I'm so intrigued by the story. I think it's the greatest story on Wall Street that still so many people don't know about, which makes me feel like we're still early. And with Bitcoin too, like, oh, it's at all-time highs. And a lot of people say to me that I talk to about like Bitcoin, they're like, oh, what's the next Bitcoin? What else are you in? And I'm like, only Bitcoin. Only Bitcoin. I think Ethereum has great potential. I feel like XRP is the most overhyped thing, to be honest with you. But I'm only in Bitcoin. And everyone's like, oh, it's overbought. It's at all-time highs. But I think we're still relatively early, to be honest with you. We're still relatively early. And I think it ultimately works out where one day, looking a couple decades out, it's looked at in the same light as gold, is where it's like, okay, maybe I don't want to own gold, right? Or maybe I don't want to own Bitcoin, but I recognize it as a real world asset with value and holding value against the fact that countries irresponsibly printing their currency, and really stems from the fact that the United States has done it for a long time. I'm in this like awkward spot. Can't see the chat on the side if I keep the glasses on. If I take the glasses off, I'm blinded by the light. But we're going to try and just deal with it. So when you don't have any original ideas, initial dilutions were necessary to stabilize the position and pay off debt. They need to initiate their store closures and asset sales to stabilize income and expense. Takes a while. Exactly. And listen, for anyone who's getting impatient, guess what? You could sell. I can't stop you. Nobody could stop you. If you've had enough, just move on. If you're going to lose sleep at night, you might just have to move on, right? You got to do what's best for you at the end of the day. That's really just the way she goes. And Captain Price, thanks, man. I appreciate the kind words. The last dilution topped off their position, and then the bond offering gives them massive leverage on the road. Cohen's smart and knows what he's doing. Exactly. And he also has the ability to say, hey, we want to pay back the convertible note offering in cash, because if we pay it back in shares, then we're diluting. And even if they did, right, look at the difference. It's not too dramatic. And keep in mind, they could have up to 1 billion shares outstanding. Like, that was voted upon. So it's really the difference of 50 million in shares, which, is a pretty significant amount. It's about like a 10% difference here. But I think really, given where they're at, when the conversion terms are met, that will really determine if they want to pay it back in cash or shares. I really think that is the big time X factor. Let's see. Yeah, I do too. Every time we get a run-up coming from shareholders, instead of just letting the price go up and increasing the market cap of the company he's heading. I see what you're saying, man. And Cohen said he likes the bro, you're killing me. Listen, I see what you're saying. I understand like the dilution could be frustrating, but I feel like just with the direction they want to go of acquiring assets, like you need capital available to do so. And also, I think from his perspective and generally like the board, you don't want just a quick run up and everybody to sell out, right? And also think from their perspective, the shareholders, why would you want it to run and everybody sell out? Yes, it's great for me and you as individuals. We can make a lot of money, right? If it just shoots up to 1,000. But from his perspective, like even if the stock went up to like 1,000, right? Just tomorrow, it just goes nuts, right? What at that point he can't really sell. Then it's either going to say, "Oh, we moved the market. He's going to deal with these lawsuits and this and that." The point at which Ryan Cohen could sell is like if he turns around the company and really thrives forward. But also, I don't think he's going to want to sell. I think eventually, when they're rocking and rolling, and they got some different, what it sounds like maybe stocks, right, based on the update to the investment policy here. Once they have some different assets on the balance sheet beyond Bitcoin, and they're really doing well, then maybe they pivot to issuing dividends potentially, right? And then the long-term shareholders can continue to be incentivized to hold, and also the board members can be paid out without having to sell their shares, right? That's just in theory. But on the other side of the coin, it's like, well, maybe they can stop issuing shares or 0% convertible notes if they're just using what they make in profit to continue to reinvest, and then they don't have to issue more shares, right? But I got to be honest with you, man. I don't think they're done issuing shares forever. I think there's going to be another convertible note offering down the line. I honestly don't think until like the end of this year at the earliest. That's my gut feeling. But if it really runs, right, GameStop goes through another crazy cycle like back here, it goes to like $60 a share. I think they're going to issue shares, man. I got to be honest. I think they're just going to continue to like stack cash when they see fit and then deploy that cash as they see fit. And they're going to just play the cycles in a way, right? Not play the cycles, but they're going to say, okay, if the share price is moving way up, then you know what? We're going to go ahead and buy shares. Or sorry, issue shares rather. But yeah, dividends are taxed though, and they suck. That is true, Mr. Doodle. And then it's also going to be like, what, 1%? What's really use in that? So I guess, now I'm kind of thinking about it again. Probably not going to do dividends anytime remotely soon. Maybe way in the future, right? If they start to feel like they want to give cash back to shareholders, but then maybe at that point they're buying back shares, right? Maybe. So why wouldn't they wait to dilute it to peak 1,000 and they would make a fuckload of money themselves? Well then, yeah, I guess that it's just a matter of though you don't know exactly when the top of a cycle is going to be, right? So I feel like they're doing it based off like, okay, well, it's way up from where it's been, kind of like that approach. See, they dilute at 500 and they make 440 billion, improves to 1 billion. All shareholders' values increase due to market cap and inclusion in S&P. Then more money for M&A. True, but also S&P 500. I think that's coming sooner than later. Dividends also take from stock price to deploy for idiots. It's true. Now, Mr. Doodle, you're bringing up valid points. I'm not gonna lie. Let's see, and no, 1,500. We won't get there without the cash we're accumulating now. That is true, Johnny. That's true. Cohen is building the legacy short sellers a golden bridge to retreat on the offering. It is brilliant and perfectly timed. For me, I just want to see the company continue to move up in terms of share price. And I fully accept that like they're going to do convertible note offerings. There could be another share offering. But really for me, I just want to see them continue to be more profitable and accumulate assets. And for it being cash for now, I'm okay with that. If we're sitting here 2-3 years from now and they never buy any more Bitcoin or other assets, I'm kind of like, what are we doing, right? But I really just don't see that being the case. But I also don't think they're really going to overrush into making any moves of any kind. I need to grab some water. All right, we're back. Am I unmuted? Let's make sure. OBS. I keep always recording by accident. I gotta fix the hockey. You see, I'm sweating. I literally got this thing. Now I'm going 3 buttons open. It's warm in here. It's warm by me, but oh man, what a journey this is, though. What a journey this is. I love doing earnings day streams. I wanted to keep going forever, but I'm like, I'm running out of things to say a little bit. Getting tired, but let's keep going here because why not? The vibes are good. Yes, but we already have the money, so any further dilutions take advantage of Shoulders saving his company. Love the debate in the chat. Listen, you got to agree to disagree sometimes. You can debate back and forth. But I really like the thing that's really I can't believe I didn't see this sooner. The overall goals of the investment policy are to provide sufficient liquidity to meet day-to-day obligations of the company and optimize investment returns within the guidelines of the investment policy. So let's take this away, and then we'll go ahead and scan this. Let's go ahead and scan this here. And then scan here. Oh, wait. Shoot, that's not what I meant to do. It's not. This is what I want to scan. To save this. We'll have to update this on my Obsidian sheet here. So let's go ahead and save this. Okay, we'll save that for later, but so this is really the most interesting thing. I think the two most exciting things for me in this report are, one, the strength in the collectible segment, and two, saying that they could buy equity securities limited to those listed on the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ, which I assume, they could probably buy something on the Dow if they wanted. But again, I feel like if they're going to buy into something with shares, I feel like it's pretty much going to be a tech company of some kind. I feel like it's got to be. It's the only thing that would be like in correlation. But what about like Corsair, right? I remember people were saying that a while ago. Maybe like a big name brand like that. How are they doing? What's their situation? Oh, they only went public back in 2020, and they've been in the dumps. Ooh, maybe not. Oh, okay, they're positive there. Okay, positive there. I don't know. Let's see. Oh. Okay, so sorry, Corsair. Let's go to profile. Okay, price of sales. So they have a lot of sales in terms of their valuation, because price of sales is lower than 1, meaning their market cap is literally lower than their trailing 12-month revenue. And by the way, the best way to look for a company or details on a company is always go look at their financial relations. But when you want a quick overview, I go to Yahoo Finance. It just gives me the latest. But it's really best to look at their own financial statements, right? So insiders 3%. Maybe you got to get the current CEO, or if there's a good person on there with a significant amount of shares, a good person, but someone who has a significant amount of shares, become a board member, right? If you theoretically bought it out. Not too much debt. GameStop could pay that off, and current ratio is decent. Operating free cash flow. Maybe there's an opportunity there, but I don't know. I don't know too much about Corsair, but I feel like even right, I'm thinking about too. Ryan Cohen said in his Bitcoin conference interview, "Hey, we realized we had to diversify away from just video games." So, with that being the case, maybe they're not looking to buy into a stock that's related to gaming, right? I don't know if you guys can think of any other ones. I really feel like something with tech, and just like a big name tech, right? Maybe just some shares of Google, but I don't know. I feel like for Google, on like a side note, I know they have a pretty diversified business, but you don't think Google search is taking a hit from everything that's going on with ChatGPT and all these AI chatbots? So pretty much, if that's the case, like I feel like they're losing market share on a day-to-day basis. So I think Google's relatively newer on a dividend. Funny, we were just talking about dividends. So I don't know if Google would be the best play. I feel like of the Mag 7, right? I have a Mag 7 watch list. Of all the Mag 7 plays, I got to be honest, I really don't like Meta, but I feel like they're going to perform the best over the next 7. Or Amazon. Actually, Amazon could be a great play because their cloud business is expanding so much. And that's really what makes Amazon immensely profitable. Yeah, like a lot of their revenue comes from Amazon Prime and us delivering everything. But you know how much they make on that? Like such a minimal cost after all the spending they do on transporting the packages, the warehouse. Like there's so much overhead costs. Really, their profitability comes from the cloud. So I wonder if there's an opportunity there. And it's also like really as simple as, do you think Amazon will be bigger or smaller in 5 years from now, right? Sometimes you can't just make an investment based on that decision, but if you like the fundamentals, then that's just a nice added factor, right? Amazon is going to be bigger in 5 years from now. But you got to keep in mind that doesn't necessarily mean the stock price will be higher in 5 years from now, right? Imagine we're in an elongated recession of some kind, it could be lower, right? Or there could be some unforeseen issue, unforeseen competitor. I don't know who can compete with Amazon like that. But I do wonder, now I really got to think about what shares could they buy, right? And it does say, certain cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin. So theoretically, they could buy other cryptos. But I got to be honest, if it was anything other, I would rather them just do Bitcoin. But if it was anything other than Ethereum, I'd kind of be like, I don't know. I just Solana, I can't fully wrap my head around it. I think it has some potential. XRP, I understand the technology use case and reading about it, but I just don't see how the thing itself has value. Like the XRP token itself has value, because if you're a bank using the XRP network to instantly send it to another bank, right, to be extremely efficient and cost efficient, why would you ever keep XRP though? You could take $100,000, convert to XRP, transfer the money to the other bank. They get the XRP, immediately convert it back to dollars. So where's the value in XRP itself? I feel like that's the situation with a lot of cryptocurrencies that are not Bitcoin, in my opinion at least, where I feel like the networks have a lot of potential and the blockchain itself has potential, but the tokens don't necessarily correlate to that. Whereas with Bitcoin, it really comes down to the supply, because the supply of Bitcoin, the rate it's being created is reverse exponential. It's disinflationary, I believe that's the technical term, in the sense that, yes, it's inflating, but like in terms of how much is being created, but each time there's a Bitcoin having, half as much Bitcoin is created on a daily basis. So the rate of creation continues to decline over time. And that's really the most bullish thing to me. Like my overall thesis with Bitcoin boils down to the fact that the US dollar is endlessly created, and Bitcoin, no one can go out there and just create more Bitcoin, right? And it's as simple as that, but also, it goes deeper than that, right? Like I think go into that another day, but my point is, like, that's what it boils down to me in its simplest version. Crop. Okay, Joshua, thank you for being here. Cardano is good as crypto. Its tech is what's facilitating usage of Bitcoin in the next few years. I looked into Cardano a while back, but I'll look into it again, man. I'll look into it again. Listen, I know I probably riled some people up with saying, like, oh, the other cryptos are trash, but I would say I've just truly been orange pilled, to be honest with you. And I do think other cryptos will succeed. I think it's just hard to pick, like, who will be the winner. And I feel like overall, whatever cryptos emerge as like the other big ones, like Bitcoin will succeed regardless. So I do think there'll be other cryptocurrencies that are relevant and a major part of the world over the next decade. But I think it's like an absolute dogfight, and like no matter how much they fight, like Bitcoin will still be like the biggest one. That's kind of where my head's at. But I think we'll leave it there for today. I really appreciate everyone tuning in. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. I always feel so like corny, like, yo, chat, how we feeling, right? It just feels so silly to say sometimes. But no, I really appreciate you guys being here. YouTube's a lot of fun. It can be a crazy place sometimes. You get some crazy people in the comments. But listen, I welcome everybody. Bring on the bulls, the bears, the traders, the investors. Whatever floats your boat, I suggest you do that, honestly, because at the end of the day, nobody knows themselves. Nobody knows you better than you. So you have to do what's best for you, whether it's with GameStop, investing in general, life in general, and just take it nice and easy, right? There's always, especially with GameStop, but with stocks in general, there's always a lot of noise. Do this. Oh my gosh, this. Oh my gosh, that, right? There's always going to be a lot of noise. You got to, just take it all in. If you feel like there's too much noise, you can't make a decision. Sometimes just waiting is the better choice. Generally speaking. But overall, do what's best for yourself. Keep learning. Keep doing the little things right. And just continue to drive forward. Focus on your own path for building wealth. Building wealth is so, so important right now. I genuinely believe now more than ever. I feel like, a couple decades ago, you could just go work a regular job, buy a house, start a family, and it was simple. I feel like I'm 24 right now, about to turn 25. I just feel like anyone I talk to that's my age, like, it's not that simple. Like, you have to be investing, building side income, keep moving up in your career, right? And again, everyone's on their own path, but doing these different things that all together lead to accumulating and building wealth. And I think Bitcoin is a great tool for that. And like I was kind of saying before, I feel like you have to treat yourself, your own financial situation, as if you're a business. And I like how GameStop treats their business, right? Or how Ryan Cohen is like, okay, I expect everybody to treat company cash as their own. And that's how we're going to rock and roll. And yeah, I think you guys kind of got what I'm saying. I'm kind of running out of energy here, running out of renewable energy, but I tried to renew it with some water. Fired up with coffee before, but now I feel myself like, you know, I just realized I haven't even checked GameStop stock in quite a while now. It's been ranting away, but yeah, it's not really moved much. You know, it's kind of just floating around. Again, it could be lower tomorrow. If so, so be it. That's really what I think. Honestly, that's really what I think. And let's see, bought 4,710 Bitcoin for about 500 million on May 3rd. Here's a new investment policy. Posted adjusted net income of 17 cents per share. However, revenue dropped 17%. Set to release its earnings. Okay, so these are just headlines from TradingView. They don't even look accurate right now, but I'm sure those get updated. Anything else? Any other filings? I don't think so. Yeah. Let's see. Oh, the 8K. Oh, wait. Let's see. What's this? Okay. On June 10th, GameStop issued a press release announcing financial results. A copy of the press release. Okay, the 8K was just saying, hey, we filed a quarterly filing. So, nothing. I was like, wait, one more filing. What does this mean? More Bitcoin? But good stream, bro. Thank you, man. Thank you. You're on the right path, bro. Risk take. Thanks, man. Thanks, man. I would like to think so. And listen, anytime you guys are feeling down or you feel like, oh, I keep messing up or something, just know, like, everyone is making mistakes, right? And it sounds like so cliche, but really what I've been working on is, like, you know, you can't like beat yourself up. It just does no good. For me, just anytime I'm like in my head too much, thinking too much, I just go for a walk. Just go for a walk and reset. And if I'm like, I just feel like my mind's cloudy, I can't make a decision, I put that decision off, right? Obviously, depends. If it's like decision of what to do that particular night, gotta kind of decide, right? But also, you know, keep in mind, sometimes a wrong decision is better than no decision. I don't think that applies to investing, but just life in general. I feel like that's a good piece of advice I got. But just trying to do all the little things right. I got to do another gardening update. I got peppers growing outside. I got some basil, fresh basil, so good. Got to make a nice sauce. Got some other stuff started. I got basil, green onions, squash, tomatoes, and more peppers rocking and rolling. So follow me on X if you don't already, at Tetron Invest, where I'll post some updates on some different stuff. And I'm honestly thinking about it. You see the stuff back here? Back here. Tetron Talks rebrand. Easy right there. Thinking about rebranding Tetron Talks because I feel like Tetron Invest sounds like, not that it matters, right? Like, like I'm a financial guru. And that's not really what I want to be perceived as. Like, I want to cover GameStop story and eventually, you know, maybe cover AMD and a couple other stocks that I follow closely and just feel comfortable enough to consistently talk on. But also, you know, talk about some other stuff, maybe some sports, maybe some just my gardening journey, right? Just documenting, right? I feel like that's the fun part about YouTube, just documenting the journey, especially with like streaming, right? It's just, hey, this is what I'm doing. Here's how I'm going about it. You can see me grow, and hopefully you can grow alongside me in your own way. But yeah, it's going to change life. It's 31,000 with GME. I have 60K worth of XRP. Damn. 6K worth of XRP, that's crazy, man. It's crazy. I hope it works out for you. Listen, I know I was saying, like, I don't believe in XRP or these. I doubt other cryptos. Doesn't mean I don't want them to work out. It doesn't mean I don't want them to work out. I wish everybody all the best. I hope anybody that's buying any altcoin or smaller investment, you know, I do think it's worth noting that you got to take chances sometimes. Like, anyone who you looked at, especially if you're on a younger individual, I feel like you got to take chances sometimes to an extent, right? You got to manage that and determine where should I take a chance, right? And it doesn't always have to be specifically in investing, but I feel like you got to understand, like, you got to take chances sometimes to get to that next level, right? But again, you got to manage it, and it's all circumstantial. It's really completely circumstantial and based on your own knowledge. But if you just continue, you know, also try and hear when, you know, people are like on the other side, so you can understand, like, okay, well, why do I disagree with, like, so, like, for example, if I don't believe in XRP, like hear what I say, and they think, well, no, he doesn't understand this part of it though, and this is why I'm actually bullish. So it's like you got to be able to kind of, if you want your case, your bull case to be strong enough to dismiss the bear case, and I think that's the case with GameStop, right? People are like, oh, the bears are still like, oh, well, revenue's still going down. Okay, but earnings keep going up. They borrowed money at a 0% rate to buy Bitcoin that they could pay back in cash if they so choose, or they could do shares. It's up to them. And now we see that they're going to maybe buy some stuff on the public stock, New York Stock Exchange, right? Which I lost it here, but we just saw it before the investment policy was changed. So we'll see, right? I'll continue to keep covering the story. Again, I am live every Friday at 5 p.m. Occasionally I'll go live here and there if something pops up. I've got some ideas bouncing around on my skull that I'm like, all right, let's just get on here. But I'm really consistently doing Fridays around 5 p.m. But not going to lie, sometimes it could be like 5:10 because coming home from work, so I'll just start it as soon as I can. And then, yeah, some videos and whatnot. And I honestly don't post it much on X anymore because it's just so much craziness, so much tinfoil, and just... I just feel like every time I scroll on there, my brain rots. Like, I've really been working on just not being like a doom scroller. And I'm not saying like, oh, I've just stopped and I'm perfect, right? Look at me. But really try to just limit my scrolling. Like, it's like I want to stay in touch with things and become knowledgeable, but I don't want to just be scrolling because that's where I feel like I just get like brain fog and it's like hard to focus. So yeah, GME's going to do what GME's going to do. It's the long game, so don't sweat it. Exactly, man. Exactly. Tetron Capital if you start a hedge fund. Hey, man, I like it. I like it, bro. I like it. So, again, guys, thank you so much for being here. I wish all the bears well, all the bulls, the traders, the investors. I wish everybody well. I hope everyone has a fantastic night. Take care.